In this video, we're breaking down 3 hours of the most disturbing regular show fan theories. Let's get started. First up, we got the acid trip theory. One of the most popular fan theories about regular show claims the entire series takes place inside an acid trip. This theory has spread across YouTube, Reddit, and fan communities since the show first aired in 2010. The idea suggests that everything we see in the show is happening through the hallucinating eyes of Mordecai, the Blue Jays character, who might actually be a regular person tripping on drugs. While creator J.G. Quintel has never confirmed this theory is true, the show has enough strange connections to make fans keep talking about it year after year. The theory gained serious attention when Channel Frederator featured it on their show Cartoon Conspiracy in 2014. The episode was called One Huge Acid Trip? Regular Show Theory? And helped spread the idea to millions of viewers. The theory also gets discussed constantly on regular show subreddits, where fans debate whether it holds up or falls apart when you look closer at the evidence. Some fans embrace it completely, while others enjoy pointing out all the ways it doesn't work with what actually happens in the show. The biggest piece of evidence supporting this theory comes from where regular show actually started. Before the show existed on Cartoon Network, creator J.G. Quintel made a student film at the California Institute of the Arts in 2006. This short film was called 2 in the AM PM, and it featured 2 convenience store workers on the night shift during Halloween. The film runs about 7 minutes and plays out very differently from what eventually became regular show. The short takes place in a gas station, features human characters instead of cartoon animals, and includes direct drug use and swearing that would never make it onto Cartoon Network. In 2 in the AM PM, the tall clerk character offers his coworker some candy. The shorter clerk eats it, not knowing what's inside. The tall clerk then casually mentions he put drugs in the candy, specifically marijuana. But then the shorter clerk asks when the acid is going to kick in, revealing the candy was actually laced with LSD. Once the acid takes effect, both characters start hallucinating and transforming into different shapes. The tall clerk, voiced by Quintel, turns into a blue jay that looks exactly like Mordecai from regular show. The shorter clerk, voiced by Sam Marin, turns into a gumball machine that became the basis for Benson, the park manager in regular show. During their trip, the characters also transform into other shapes that later appeared in the show, including an early version of Pops, the lollipop-headed character. The short film makes clear these transformations are drug-induced hallucinations. The characters panic about customers coming in while they're tripping. They try to concentrate on looking normal again so they can get through their shift without getting caught. The whole film treats the acid trip as the reason these ordinary gas station workers are seeing themselves as cartoon characters and objects. This direct connection between LSD and the character designs that would later appear in regular show forms the foundation of the acid trip theory. When Quintel pitched regular show to Cartoon Network in 2008, he adapted these characters for a kids' network. The drug references disappeared. The humans became actual cartoon animals and objects, and the gas station became a park. But fans who discovered 2 in the AM PM noticed the unmistakable visual connection. Mordecai in regular show looks identical to the Blue Jay hallucination from the student film. Benson the gumball machine is the exact same design as the hallucination in the short. Even their voices stayed the same, with Quintel voicing Mordecai and Sam Marin voicing Benson in both projects. Supporters of the acid trip theory point to how regular show episodes are structured. Almost every episode follows the same pattern. Mordecai and Rigby get assigned a simple, boring task at the park. Maybe they need to set up chairs for a company event, or grill hot dogs, or clean the fountain. These are completely normal groundskeeper jobs that should take maybe an hour of work, but then something goes wrong. The simple task escalates into something supernatural, surreal, or completely impossible. Setting up chairs leads to battling an interdimensional demon. Grilling hot dogs results in summoning a monster from another realm. Playing rock, paper, scissors 100 times in a row opens a portal to another dimension. This pattern of mundane reality suddenly breaking apart into bizarre fantasy mirrors how drug trips are often described. Things start normal, then reality bends and warps into something unrecognizable. The theory suggests that Mordecai and Rigby aren't actually fighting demons and traveling through time. Instead, they're regular park workers who keep taking drugs, and their trips keep getting more intense. Every episode represents another trip, another hallucination where boring work transforms into cosmic adventures. The show also includes plenty of references that seem aimed at viewers who might appreciate drug culture. Digital clocks in the background of episodes sometimes show 4:20, which is widely recognized as a reference to marijuana use. Characters' rooms feature Pink Floyd posters, and Pink Floyd has long been associated with psychedelic music and drug culture. The show references The Big Lebowski, a movie about a laid-back stoner character. These details don't prove anything on their own, but they do suggest the creators were aware of and comfortable with including nods to drug culture within a Cartoon Network show. Regular Show earned a TV PG rating, which meant Cartoon Network wanted it aimed at older kids and teens rather than young children. The network specifically told Quintel they wanted to age up their programming from the TV Y7 content they had been producing. This direction let the crew include more adult-oriented humor. Characters drink what appears to be beer in several episodes, sometimes getting drunk enough to act silly or get sick. The show uses mild profanity that gets censored, with characters saying things like pissed and crap. Sexual innuendo pops up occasionally in dialogue and situations. In a 2015 interview at San Diego Comic-Con, a reporter directly asked J.G. Quintel about the fan theory. The reporter mentioned theories circulating online that claim the whole show is an acid trip and that Rigby is Mordecai's dead best friend from childhood. Quintel responded honestly, saying he hadn't read much fan fiction or conspiracy theories about the show. He said the acid trip theory sounded amazing and that he would have to look it up to see what people think. His response didn't confirm or deny the theory. He simply acknowledged it existed and seemed interested but not personally invested in whether fans believed it or not. This neutral response from Quintel is important because it shows he wasn't trying to shut down the theory or insist fans were wrong. At the same time, he didn't validate it as secretly true. He treated it as an interesting interpretation that fans had created on their own. Quintel has discussed in other interviews how Regular Show came from his own experiences growing up in Hanford, California, where there wasn't much to do. He and his friends would try to entertain themselves and avoid boredom, and those experiences shaped the show's core concept. He's also mentioned how British shows like The Mighty Boosh influenced the humor, and how video games like Toe Jam and Earl inspired the dynamic between Mordecai and Rigby. None of these interviews confirm the acid trip reading, but they also don't contradict it. The theory becomes more complex when fans try to map real-life characters onto the Regular Show cast. Some versions claim that Rigby represents Mordecai's childhood best friend who died, which is why Rigby appears shorter and more immature despite being the same age as Mordecai. Other versions suggest Benson represents Mordecai's actual boss in real life, transformed into an angry gumball machine through the lens of the trip. Skips might be a drug dealer who always has solutions to problems. Margaret could be Mordecai's real girlfriend, who he sees differently depending on how the drugs affect his paranoia and jealousy. These interpretations get very specific and detailed, building entire backstories that the show never confirms or denies. The challenge with proving or disproving the acid trip theory comes down to how Regular Show presents its world. The show never claims to be realistic. From the very first episode, we accept that a blue jay and a raccoon work at a park, that their boss is a living gumball machine, that one of their co-workers is a literal ghost, and that another co-worker is an immortal yeti. The show establishes early on that this is a cartoon universe where impossible things are normal. So when impossible things happen in episodes, we can't point to them as proof of hallucination, because the show's universe already operates on cartoon logic rather than real-world rules. Regular Show ran for 8 seasons from September 2010 to January 2017, producing 244 episodes total. The show won an Emmy Award and received critical acclaim throughout its run. It became one of Cartoon Network's most successful shows of the 2010s, alongside Adventure Time. In the final season, the show actually moved its setting to space, with the characters traveling through the galaxy. The series finale showed where all the main characters ended up years later, with Mordecai married with kids and everyone having moved on with their lives. This ending seems to contradict the acid trip theory, unless you interpret it as Mordecai finally coming down from the drugs and returning to normal life, which some fans have done. The production history of Regular Show shows how 2 in the AM/PM evolved into a network cartoon. Quintel created the student film as part of a 48-hour film project at CalArts, where students would draw words from a hat and create a short film in one weekend. The film was rough, animated in a storyboard style with minimal movement. It worked as a student project about drug culture and slacker life. When Quintel got the chance to pitch to Cartoon Network's Cartoonstitute program, he had to adapt the concept for broadcast television. The drugs disappeared, but the spirit of 2 slackers trying to make boring work more interesting remained. The surreal humor and escalating situations carried over from the short to the series. Fan theories about cartoons often try to add darkness or hidden meanings to shows that seem light-hearted on the surface. The acid trip theory fits this pattern. It takes a funny show about cartoon characters and suggests a tragic reality underneath, where someone is trapped in drug addiction. These theories spread because they're surprising and because they recontextualize everything you thought you knew about a show. They make fans look closer at details they might have missed and debate what's really happening on screen. Channel Frederator's Cartoon Conspiracy series built its entire concept around examining these fan theories. The show would take popular theories from the internet, present evidence for them, and sometimes debunk them with facts from the actual cartoons. Their Regular Show episode about the acid trip theory helped legitimize the idea by giving it serious examination in a produced video format. The episode was hosted by Emily Carson and featured Chad Quant as a special guest. It presented the connection to 2 in the AM/PM and discussed how the show's structure could support the interpretation. Reddit communities dedicated to Regular Show have thoroughly discussed and debated this theory. Some users defend it passionately, pointing to every detail that could support it. Others methodically pick it apart, showing how many elements of the show don't work if you try to read everything as a hallucination. The fact that the theory gets partially debunked in these discussions doesn't make it disappear. People keep bringing it up because the visual and tonal connection to 2 in the AM/PM is undeniable, even if the literal interpretation doesn't hold up to scrutiny. The theory persists because Regular Show genuinely does have roots in a short film about an acid trip. That's not speculation or interpretation. 2 in the AM/PM literally shows characters taking LSD and hallucinating the forms that became Regular Show characters. J.G. Quintel confirmed he reused those character designs when creating the show. The question isn't whether the connection exists. The question is whether Regular Show itself, the actual television series that aired on Cartoon Network, is meant to depict an ongoing drug experience, or whether it's simply a cartoon that happens to share DNA with a student film about drugs. Most evidence suggests Regular Show functions as its own thing, a surreal comedy where the surrealism is just part of the cartoon world, rather than explained by drug use. The show never references drugs directly, except in ways that work as substitutes, like characters getting drunk off chicken wings in one episode. The characters act like real cartoon characters dealing with supernatural events, not like people hallucinating. They remember previous adventures, maintain consistent relationships, and develop as characters over 8 seasons in ways that don't align with someone just tripping repeatedly. But the theory remains popular because it offers a lens for understanding why Regular Show is so weird. The show really does take mundane situations and explode them into cosmic absurdity. That pattern could describe a drug trip just as easily as it describes cartoon comedy structure. The fact that the pattern appears in every single episode gives the theory something to point to. You can watch any episode and say, "See, this is another trip," if you want to read it that way. The acid trip theory works best as a way to appreciate regular shows' history and influences, rather than as a literal explanation for what the show is about. Understanding that Quintel created these characters during a student film about LSD helps explain the show's commitment to surreal, reality-bending humor. The show inherited the energy and visual style of that short without inheriting its literal drug content. It's similar to how many animated shows from the 1960s and 1970s had psychedelic visuals influenced by drug culture of that era, but the shows themselves weren't actually about drugs. What makes this theory different from random fan speculation is that foundation in 2 in the AM PM. Most fan theories about hidden darkness in cartoons have no basis in production reality. They're just interpretations people invent based on reading too much into innocent details. The acid trip theory for regular show has legitimate historical backing. The characters genuinely did originate in a film about an acid trip. That makes the theory feel more substantial, even when the evidence for it applying to the actual show is thin. The theory also connects to larger conversations about cartoons in the 2010s that appealed to both kids and adults. Regular Show, Adventure Time, and similar shows featured enough weirdness and adult references to attract college-age viewers, while remaining technically appropriate for children. These shows existed in a sweet spot where younger viewers enjoyed the colorful action and silly jokes, while older viewers appreciated the stranger humor, pop culture references, and occasional mature themes. The acid trip theory speaks to that older audience specifically, giving them a way to explain the show's appeal in terms they relate to. Whether you believe the acid trip theory or not, it highlights something genuinely interesting about Regular Show. The show really is uncommonly weird for Cartoon Network. It takes bigger risks with its reality than most kids' cartoons. It commits fully to absurd escalation in ways that feel genuinely unpredictable. And it all started with a student film where 2 guys literally ate LSD and turned into cartoon characters. That origin story shapes how fans understand the show, even 20 years later. The acid trip theory isn't canon, but it's not completely baseless either. It exists in that interesting space where fan interpretation meets production history, where you can see the DNA of something explicit transformed into something implied. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Pops as a literal god and everyone else as his toys. Some fan theories about cartoons add darkness to lighthearted shows. Others just point out what the show itself already revealed and ask viewers to think about the implications. The theory that Pops functions as a literal god and everyone else exists as pieces in his cosmic story falls into the second category. Regular Show spent 8 seasons building to a finale that confirmed Pops possesses universe-level power. But the disturbing part comes from what that means for everyone around him. The show confirmed in Season 8 that Pops is not human. He was born Mega Cranus on the planet Lollyland, and is described in the Regular Show wiki as the Chosen One and the embodiment of pure good. His twin brother Antipops, whose real name is Malum Cranus, represents the embodiment of evil. The universe created Antipops specifically to balance out Pops when he was born. This is not fan speculation or interpretation. The show directly states that Pops exists as a cosmic being whose very existence required the universe to create an equal opposite force. Mr. Mellard found Pops after a previous battle cycle ended and adopted him. The show reveals this in the episode called The Ice Tape during Season 8. Mr. Mellard wanted to give Pops a normal life, so he bought a park and built a house where Pops could live. The entire park that serves as the main setting for Regular Show exists because a billionaire adopted a god and tried to give him an ordinary childhood. Every job, every relationship, Every conflict that happens at the park takes place in what amounts to an elaborate playground constructed around a cosmic being. Think about what that actually means. Benson manages the park and constantly yells at Mordecai and Rigby for slacking off. Muscle Man works as a groundskeeper alongside High Five Ghost. Skips handles maintenance and provides wisdom when supernatural problems occur. All of them work at a park that was specifically created to give Pops something resembling a normal life. Their jobs exist because Mr. Mallard needed staff to make the illusion of normalcy work. The park is not just a workplace. The park is a constructed environment designed to keep Pops happy and safe. Pops behaves differently from everyone else throughout the entire series. He speaks in an old-fashioned, gentlemanly way, offering lollipops as payment and delighting in simple pleasures. He takes childlike joy in everything he sees and does. The show explains this behavior by revealing that Pops was locked up and protected for all or most of his childhood. Mr. Maillard kept him isolated, which is why Pops acts so naive and innocent about the world. But that explanation becomes more disturbing when you remember Pops is a cosmic being. Mr. Maillard kept a god locked away like a child who needed constant supervision. The finale reveals something even more unsettling about how reality works in regular show. When the park crew arrives at Lollyland in the three-part finale called A Regular Epic Final Battle, they meet natives who show them ancient tapestries. These tapestries depict every battle that has occurred between Pops and Anti-Pops over the millennia. One specific tapestry shows warriors who look exactly like the park crew fighting alongside Pops. The show explicitly states that everyone in the park has been involved in all of these battles throughout previous cycles of the universe. That means Mordecai, Rigby, Benson, Muscle Man, High Five Ghost, and Skips have all fought and died alongside Pops countless times before. They just do not remember it. Every 14 billion years, Pops and Anti-Pops fight. The battle ends in a stalemate. Their fists collide. The universe resets. Everything starts over again. The Guardian of Lollyland, a giant statue who exists specifically to witness and record these battles, confirms that she has never seen the battle end in victory. Only mutual destruction followed by universal reset. Lollyland is the only planet that survives each reset. The natives there keep records through their tapestries so they can document what happens each time. Everyone else in the universe gets erased and remade. The park crew dies. They get reborn. They live different lives in slightly different versions of reality. The tapestries show them wearing armor in some cycles, wielding weapons, looking different but still recognizable as versions of the same people. They always end up fighting for Pops because that is their cosmic role. This creates a deeply uncomfortable reality for everyone who works at the park. Their memories are not permanent. Their relationships reset. Everything they build together gets wiped away when the universe restarts. Mordecai spent years trying to figure out his feelings for Margaret and then CJ. Rigby worked hard to graduate high school and prove himself. Benson dealt with anger issues and tried to become a better manager. Muscle Man found love with Starla. All of that character growth, all those relationships, all those struggles happened before in previous versions of the universe, and will happen again if the cycle continues. The show presents Pops as kind, gentle, and caring. He genuinely loves his friends and wants everyone to be happy. But his very existence dooms everyone around him to an eternal cycle of death and rebirth. They cannot escape. The tapestries prove they will always find their way to Pops. They will always fight alongside him. They will always die when the battle reaches its inevitable conclusion. Pops does not choose this fate for them, but his cosmic nature makes it unavoidable. Mr. Mallard knew about Pops' destiny. The Ice Tape episode shows Mr. Mallard leaving a video message explaining everything to Pops. Mr. Mallard adopted Pops anyway and built a park around him despite knowing the universe would eventually reset. He gave Pops employees, created a home for him, and tried to provide normalcy even though none of it would last. Mr. Mellard wanted Pops to live a normal life, but he chose to involve other people in that experiment without those people knowing what they were signing up for. Benson thinks he manages a regular park. Mordecai and Rigby think they work normal groundskeeper jobs. None of them know they exist in a carefully constructed environment designed to keep a god entertained and happy. The park is not their workplace. The park is Pop's playhouse. They are not employees. They are companions assigned to a cosmic being who needs supervision and socialization. The finale confirms Pops possesses reality warping powers far beyond what the show previously demonstrated. He can teleport, manipulate energy, create weather systems, generate shields, shift his size to become a giant titan, and fly through space at incredible speeds. When Pops and Anti-Pops fight at full power, they literally erase sections of the universe. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost get caught in an erasing beam and disappear completely. Anti-Pops deletes entire planets with casual gestures. Pops matches that destructive capability because he represents the equal opposite force. These are not cartoon superpowers, these are god-level abilities. Pops can reshape reality, erase existence, and restore what was destroyed. When Pops sacrifices himself at the end of the finale, everything Anti-Pops erased comes back. The park workers who got deleted return to life. The planets that were destroyed reappear. Pops literally restarts reality just by choosing to end his own existence. That is divine power. Pops is functionally a god walking around in the shape of a lollipop man. Everyone at the park interacts with Pops like he is a weird but harmless co-worker. They tolerate his strange behavior and old-fashioned speech. They humor him when he offers lollipops as payment. They include him in their activities and treat him like a friend. None of them understand they are befriending a being who could erase them from existence with a thought. Pops would never do that because he embodies pure goodness, but the capability exists. Every conversation, every shared moment, every friendship happens between mortals and a god who could rewrite their entire reality. The most disturbing implication comes from the fact that Pops knows the truth by season 8, but his friends do not. Pops learns about his cosmic nature and his destiny to fight Anti-Pops. He understands the universe will reset if he fails. He knows his friends have fought and died for him countless times across multiple versions of reality. Pops carries that knowledge while Mordecai, Rigby, and the others remain completely ignorant about their role in a cosmic cycle. Pops tries to protect his friends during the final battle. He makes deals with Anti-Pops. He fights as hard as he can. He ultimately chooses to sacrifice himself because that is the only way to break the cycle and save everyone. Pops dies so his friends can finally live real lives that do not end in universal reset. His final act is genuinely heroic, but it does not change the fact that for countless eons, everyone he loved has been trapped in a cycle that exists purely because of what he is. The finale shows what happens after Pops breaks the cycle. Mordecai becomes an artist, gets married to a woman named Steph, and has 3 children. Rigby marries Eileen and has 2 daughters. Muscle Man and Starla have many kids together. High Five Ghost becomes a DJ with his girlfriend Celia. Benson takes over the park after Mr. Maillard dies and marries his girlfriend Pam. Skips keeps working at the park, but switches to wearing jean shorts instead of jeans. They all live full lives spanning 25 years before reuniting at an anniversary party. These lives only happen because Pops chose to die. If Pops had continued the cycle, none of those futures would exist. Mordecai would never have kids. Rigby would never marry Eileen. Benson would never own the park. The universe would reset, and they would all start over in new versions of themselves, fighting the same cosmic battle that always ends the same way. Their ability to grow old, have families, and build lasting memories depends entirely on Pops removing himself from existence. That creates a deeply uncomfortable truth about the entire series. Every episode before Season 8 takes place in a reality that was always temporary. Every friendship formed, every lesson learned, every adventure experienced existed within a countdown to inevitable erasure. The park crew thought they were living normal lives with supernatural elements occasionally disrupting their routine. Actually, they were cosmic toys placed around a god to keep him company while he waited for his destined battle. The show never frames it that way. Regular Show treats Pops as a beloved character whose innocence and kindness make him special. The finale presents his sacrifice as beautiful and necessary. Pops saves everyone through an act of pure love. The show wants viewers to cry at his heroism and feel grateful for what he gave up. All of that is true, and the show earns those emotions through 8 seasons of character development. But step back and look at the actual structure of reality in Regular Show. A cosmic being exists. The universe creates an equal opposite. Those two beings fight forever in an eternal cycle. Other people get pulled into that cycle and die repeatedly without remembering. A billionaire finds one of these cosmic beings and builds an elaborate environment to give him a simulated normal life. The being eventually learns the truth and has to destroy himself to free everyone else. That is the actual story Regular Show tells. The theory that Pops functions as a god with everyone else as his toys is not really speculation. The show confirms Pops is a cosmic being called the embodiment of pure good. The show confirms the park was built specifically for him. The show confirms everyone there has fought and died for him across multiple universal cycles. The show confirms Pops possesses reality-warping powers that let him restart existence. Those are all canonical facts stated directly in the episodes. The theory just asks viewers to think about what those facts mean for everyone who is not Pops. Their lives matter less in cosmic terms because the universe itself treats them as supporting characters in Pop's story. The tapestries on Lollyland do not focus on Mordecai's journey or Rigby's growth. The tapestries show different versions of the cosmic battle between good and evil. Mordecai and Rigby appear in those tapestries as warriors fighting alongside Pops. They exist in the records as tools that help Pops in his eternal conflict. The park crew gets to have real lives only after Pops removes himself from the equation. As long as Pops existed, the cycle would continue. His very presence trapped everyone in a loop. Pops did not choose to be born as a cosmic being. He did not want to doom his friends to eternal repetition. He genuinely cared about everyone and tried to protect them. But intention does not change outcome. Everyone at the park existed to support Pops in his cosmic role, whether they knew it or not. Mr. Mellard tried to give Pops a normal childhood by building the park and hiring staff. That decision involved other people without their informed consent. Benson did not apply to manage a park built around a god. Mordecai and Rigby did not accept groundskeeper positions, knowing they were cosmically tied to a divine being. Skips might have known more than the others, given his immortality and connections to supernatural forces, but even he did not fully understand the scope of what was happening until Season 8. The park itself becomes a stage set in this interpretation. Every location exists because Mr. Mellard designed an environment for Pops. The house where Mordecai, Rigby, and Pops live together was built for that purpose. The fountain, the playground, the basketball court, all of it exists as scenery in Pop's constructed normal life. The staff works there because Mr. Mellard hired them to populate that environment. They are actors in a play they do not know they are performing. This reading makes every episode darker in retrospect. When Mordecai and Rigby slack off and cause problems, they are not just lazy employees. They are cosmic companions, failing to properly entertain the god they were placed alongside. When Benson yells at them and threatens to fire them, he is not just a stressed manager. He is a caretaker trying to maintain order in an environment that exists solely to keep Pops happy. Every conflict at the park ultimately serves one purpose: keeping Pops engaged and occupied until his inevitable confrontation with Auntie Pops. The finale even shows Pops watching his friends from what appears to be heaven. In the final scene, the camera reveals that Pops can see everyone at their reunion party. He watches them on a VHS tape labeled "Regular Show." Pops exists in an afterlife where he observes the friends he saved, the people who finally got to live real lives because he chose to die. That ending scene is meant to be heartwarming. Pops gets to see that his sacrifice mattered, his friends are happy. But it also confirms that even in death, Pops maintains a connection to the people whose lives revolved around him. He watches them like someone might watch a television show. The entire series is literally called Regular Show, and Pops watches it as entertainment in the afterlife. The meta joke works on multiple levels, but it also reinforces the idea that from Pops' perspective, everyone else's lives function as content for him to observe. None of this makes Pops a villain. He remains one of the kindest, most selfless characters in the show. His sacrifice breaks the cycle and gives everyone freedom. Pops genuinely loves his friends and wants them to be happy. The problem is not Pops' character. The problem is the structure of reality itself in Regular Show. The universe assigned roles. Pops got assigned the role of Cosmic Warrior. Everyone else got assigned the role of supporting cast who die and reset alongside him. Mordecai, Rigby, Benson, Muscle Man, High Five Ghost, and Skips all deserve to have their own stories that matter beyond how those stories connect to Pops. They are fully realized characters with their own dreams, relationships, and character arcs. But the universe does not care about their individual journeys. The universe cares about the eternal conflict between Mega Kranis and Malum Kranis. Everything else is just details that get erased and rewritten every 14 billion years. The theory that everyone exists as Pops' toys is harsh. It reduces beloved characters to accessories in someone else's cosmic drama. But Regular Show itself establishes that exact dynamic through its own lore. The tapestries prove it. The universal resets prove it. The fact that Pops has to die for anyone else to have a lasting future proves it. This is not fans reading darkness into an innocent show. This is fans paying attention to what the show actually revealed about how its reality works. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that Mordecai's life is quietly a tragedy, Regular Show has one of those endings that hit different depending on when you watch it. If you caught the finale as a kid, you probably remember the cosmic battle and Pops saving the universe. If you rewatched it as an adult, especially one grinding through your 20s, you probably noticed something way darker lurking underneath all that space opera spectacle. The show ends with a montage, showing where everyone ends up 25 years later. Rigby married Eileen and has 2 daughters. Muscle Man and Starla have a whole army of kids. High Five Ghost became a successful DJ in Prague. Benson married Pam and runs the park with new employees. Everyone moved forward with their lives in relatively predictable ways. Then there's Mordecai. The montage shows him alone for years after leaving the park, grinding away as a solo artist in what looks like a pretty lonely existence, before finally meeting someone new at an art gallery several years down the line. That someone is Steph, a Batwoman who also makes art. They get married and have 3 kids together. On paper, that sounds like a happy ending. In practice, it feels melancholic as hell. Mordecai spent the bulk of his adult life stuck in a dead-end job he hated, ruined every meaningful romantic relationship he ever had, watched his best friend move on without him, and then spent years completely alone before stumbling into a last-minute relationship with someone the audience never even meets until the final montage. The show never explicitly frames this as depression, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Regular Show is not secretly about Mordecai's depression. Regular Show is openly about Mordecai's depression. The show just trusted its audience to notice without spelling it out. The foundation for this reading exists right from the beginning. Mordecai is a 23-year-old college dropout working as a groundskeeper at a city park. That fact alone tells you everything about where his life went wrong. Mordecai did not plan to be a groundskeeper. He had actual ambitions once. The show confirms in multiple episodes that Mordecai attended art school because he wanted to become an artist. He had a specific dream and a path to get there. Then, someone reacted poorly to one of his portraits, and Mordecai's entire sense of self-worth collapsed. He dropped out of art school shortly before getting hired at the park because he became so insecure about his skills that he could not handle the pressure anymore. One bad critique, and Mordecai abandoned the only career path he ever cared about. That is textbook self-sabotage, driven by crippling insecurity. Mordecai gave up on his dream, not because he lacked talent, but because he could not handle the possibility of failure or judgment. He chose safety over risk and ended up in a job he openly despises. The show makes it clear throughout its entire run that Mordecai hates working at the park. He constantly complains about how boring and pointless the work is. He actively avoids doing his job whenever possible. He and Rigby spend most of their time playing video games or coming up with elaborate schemes to get out of actual work. Mordecai is not lazy in the traditional sense. He is depressed and unmotivated because he feels trapped in a life that has no direction or meaning. Working at the park was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to be the backup plan while he figured out what to do next. Instead, it became his entire existence for years. Mordecai is functionally stuck. He knows he is stuck. He hates that he is stuck. But he lacks the confidence or drive to actually change anything about his situation. That is not a character flaw. That is depression. The Rigby factor makes everything worse. Mordecai and Rigby have been best friends since kindergarten. They did everything together. When they applied to college university together, Mordecai got accepted and Rigby did not. Rigby was so terrified of losing his best friend that he forged a rejection letter to make Mordecai think he got rejected too. That lie kept Mordecai from attending the one college that would have accepted him after his art school dropout. Mordecai eventually finds out the truth during the events of Regular Show the movie, and he absolutely loses it. He tells Rigby that Rigby is the reason he is stuck in a dead-end job. He says Rigby has always held him back. He literally tells Rigby, "You are not my friend," and walks away. That confrontation is brutal because it is not entirely wrong. Rigby did sabotage Mordecai's future out of selfish fear. But the movie also makes it clear that Mordecai cannot just blame Rigby for everything. Mordecai went to a different art college after the college-university rejection. He dropped out of that school on his own. He chose to stay at the park for years instead of pursuing literally any other path. Rigby's betrayal hurt Mordecai's chances, but Mordecai's own insecurity and passivity are what really trapped him. Mordecai spends most of his 20s resenting Rigby while also depending on Rigby for emotional validation. That dynamic is toxic and codependent, and it keeps both of them stuck in place. Then there's the Margaret situation. Mordecai develops a massive crush on Margaret, a robin who works at the coffee shop near the park. He spends literal years pining after her and building up the courage to actually ask her out. They finally start dating in season 4, and everything seems great. Then Margaret gets accepted into her dream college. Mordecai decides to make things official by asking her to be his girlfriend over a fancy dinner. Margaret says no. She explains that she is leaving for college and does not want to start a serious relationship right before moving away. Mordecai gets rejected and falls into what the show explicitly describes as a deep depression. He mopes around for weeks. He stares into space with empty eyes. His friends have to actively pull him out of his emotional spiral because he cannot do it himself. That is not just a breakup. That is Mordecai's entire sense of self-worth collapsing again, because he tied his happiness to another person instead of building it internally. Mordecai eventually gets over Margaret and starts dating CJ, a cloud woman he met at a New Year's party. The relationship with CJ is healthier at first. They have fun together. They communicate better than Mordecai and Margaret ever did. Then Margaret comes back from college to work at a local news station and everything falls apart. Mordecai cannot handle being around Margaret again. He keeps sending mixed signals to both Margaret and CJ. He overthinks every interaction. He becomes so paralyzed by his own insecurity and inability to process his feelings that he ruins both relationships simultaneously. CJ breaks up with him at Muscle Man's wedding, and the show makes it clear that they never speak again. Mordecai does not just lose CJ, he loses any chance of reconciliation or closure. The relationship ends, and Mordecai is left alone again, with nothing but his own emotional mess to deal with. After CJ, Mordecai gives up on dating entirely. The show includes a scene where he literally announces that he is taking a break from relationships because he cannot handle the stress anymore. That decision is framed as mature and self-aware, but it is also deeply sad. Mordecai is not taking a break to work on himself. He is retreating because he is too scared and too exhausted to keep trying. He spends the rest of the series single and visibly lonely. There are multiple moments in the later seasons where Mordecai just stares off into space, looking completely empty. He watches Rigby and Eileen get together. He watches Muscle Man and Starla build a life together. He watches everyone around him move forward while he stays stuck in the same place, doing the same dead-end job with no romantic prospects and no clear path forward. That is not just loneliness. That is existential emptiness. The jealousy Mordecai feels toward Rigby in Season 7 makes this even more explicit. Rigby decides to go back to high school to get his diploma. Mordecai initially supports the idea, but as Rigby starts making progress, Mordecai becomes resentful. He accuses Rigby of moving up in the world while Mordecai stays stuck. He admits in a moment of brutal honesty that he always enjoyed the idea of Rigby being a failure and a high school dropout because it made Mordecai feel better about his own failures. That confession is devastating. Mordecai's self-worth is so low that he needed Rigby to be worse off than him just to feel okay about himself. When Rigby starts improving his life, Mordecai cannot handle it because it forces him to confront his own stagnation. That is textbook depression logic. Mordecai is not mad at Rigby for succeeding. He is mad at himself for not succeeding, and he is projecting that anger outward because it is easier than facing it directly. The finale drives all of this home. After Pop sacrifices himself to save the universe, the park crew returns to Earth and everyone goes their separate ways. Mordecai quits his job at the park and moves to a different city to pursue art again. That sounds like growth. That sounds like Mordecai finally choosing to chase his dream instead of staying stuck. But the montage makes it clear that the next several years are lonely as hell. Mordecai is shown working alone in his studio, signing autographs alone at gallery events, living his life alone. The show does not linger on this loneliness, but it does not hide it either. Mordecai spent years rebuilding his art career from scratch, with no romantic partner and no close friends nearby. Rigby moved on with Eileen. The rest of the park crew scattered. Mordecai was alone. Eventually, Mordecai meets Steph at one of his gallery shows. They bump into each other while signing autographs. They make eye contact and fall in love. The montage skips forward to show them married with 3 kids at the 25-year reunion. On the surface, this is a happy ending. Mordecai found someone. He built a family. He achieved his dream of becoming a successful artist. But the show never lets the audience meet Steph as a character. She has no dialogue in the finale. She is introduced purely as a visual shorthand for Mordecai eventually settled down. The head writer later explained that the creative team felt Mordecai had moved on from Margaret and CJ, and it made sense for him to meet someone new while pursuing art. That explanation is fine in theory, but in practice, it feels hollow. Steph is not a character. She is a narrative band-aid slapped onto Mordecai's story, so the finale does not end with him completely alone. The fact that Mordecai ends up with someone brand new instead of Margaret or CJ bothers a lot of fans, but it actually makes the depression reading stronger. Mordecai does not get closure with Margaret. He does not get closure with CJ. Those relationships just end, and Mordecai moves on because he has no other choice. That is realistic. That is how a lot of relationships end in real life, especially when you are in your 20s and emotionally messy. But it also means Mordecai carries all that unresolved baggage into his future. He does not heal from the Margaret situation or the CJ situation. He just buries it and hopes meeting someone new will fix the emptiness. That is not healthy. That is survival. Mordecai's ending is not triumphant. It is functional. He survives his 20s, finds stability, builds a life that looks good from the outside. But the show never confirms that Mordecai is actually happy. It just confirms that he is no longer alone. The creator, J.G. Quintel, has openly discussed how Regular Show is based on his own life and experiences in his 20s. Quintel said that Mordecai is essentially who he was in college. Hanging out with friends, getting into dumb situations, working bad jobs, coasting through life without a clear plan. Quintel worked at a movie theater and a Barnes & Noble during his school years. He described those jobs as exactly the kind of aimless minimum wage grind that defines Regular Show. The entire premise of the show is rooted in that specific 20-something experience of being stuck between adolescence and real adulthood. You have freedom, but no direction. You have time, but no purpose. You have ambitions, but no confidence to chase them. Quintel tapped into that feeling and built an entire show around it. The surreal, supernatural elements are just the coating. The core of Regular Show is two guys in their 20s who hate their jobs, avoid responsibility, and struggle to figure out who they are supposed to be. That is not a kids' show premise. That is a show about depression and stagnation, disguised as a cartoon about a blue jay and a raccoon fighting interdimensional monsters. The show never uses the word depression, but it does not need to. The visual language does the work. Mordecai staring into space with dead eyes after Margaret rejects him. Mordecai sitting alone in his apartment after CJ leaves. Mordecai watching everyone else move forward while he stays frozen. These moments are brief, but they are deliberate. The show trusts its audience to understand what they are seeing. Mordecai is not okay. He has not been okay for years. He survives and eventually builds something stable, but the path to get there is defined by failure, self-sabotage, loneliness, and emotional avoidance. That is not a secret subtext. That is the text. Regular Show is about a guy who had dreams, gave up on them out of fear, spent years stuck in a job he hated, ruined every relationship he ever had, and eventually clawed his way to something resembling stability through sheer persistence. That is depression. That is what it looks like when you are too scared to fail, so you just stop trying. Mordecai's story is sad because it is real. A lot of people live that exact life. They drift through their 20s in dead-end jobs. They watch relationships fall apart because they cannot communicate or handle their own emotions. They feel stuck and aimless and empty, but they keep going because what else can you do? Regular Show depicts that experience with brutal honesty and then wraps it in enough absurdist comedy that it does not feel unbearably heavy. But once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Mordecai's story is not about a guy who defeats his demons and finds happiness. It is about a guy who survives his own worst tendencies and eventually stumbles into something functional. That is not a happy ending. That is just an ending. And for a show that aired on Cartoon Network and marketed itself as a comedy about park workers fighting monsters, that level of emotional realism is genuinely kind of devastating. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, the theory that Skips is cursed to watch everyone he cares about die. Immortality sounds cool until you actually think about what it means. You never age, you never die. You watch everyone around you grow old and disappear while you stay frozen in place. That is not a superpower. That is a prison sentence with no end date. Skips lives that reality every single day. Regular Show frames his immortality as this mystical gift that makes him the wise problem solver for the park crew. But if you pay attention to the actual story behind how Skips became immortal and what his life has been like for the past 500+ years, it becomes obvious that immortality is not a gift at all. It is a curse that forces Skips to endure an endless cycle of loss, loneliness, and repetition with no escape. The show reveals this through flashback episodes, subtle details in how Skips behaves, and the heartbreaking reality of what happens at the end of the series when everyone moves on except him. Skips was not always immortal. He was born sometime in the 1700s or 1800s as a regular Yeti named Walks. The show reveals in the episode Skip's Story that Walks was a teenage rebel who got expelled from multiple high schools for fighting. He was reckless, energetic, fun-loving, and spent his time chasing storms with his friend Tecmo and getting into trouble. Then, he transferred to a new school and met a girl named Mona. Mona changed everything. She told Walks she did not like guys who fought, so Walks promised he would never fight again. They fell in love. They skipped together. They decorated the prom together. Walks became handy with tools because of Mona. He softened. He stopped being a fighter and started being someone who cared about building things instead of destroying them. For the first time in his life, Walks had something worth protecting. Then, Clorgbane showed up. Clorgbane was the school bully and the evil brother of the Guardians of Eternal Youth. The Guardians created the Fists of Justice, a pair of immortal gauntlets powerful enough to defeat Clorgbane, and they asked Walks to use them. Walks initially agreed, but then backed out because of his promise to Mona. He chose love over violence. He chose a peaceful life with Mona over becoming a cosmic warrior. But Clorgbane attacked the school anyway during prom. The headmaster got involved. Walks tried to fight Clorgbane with his bare mortal hands, but got overpowered. Clorgbane swung his mace to finish Walks off, but Mona threw herself in front of the blow. The ceiling collapsed. Mona was crushed to death instantly. Walks survived. The Guardians delivered the Fists of Justice just in time for Walks to beat Clorgbane and send him flying away. But Mona was already gone. Walks won the fight, but lost the only person who ever made him want to stop fighting. After Mona died, Walks was a wreck. The show depicts him with an unkempt beard a few years later when the Guardians summon him again. Skips narrates during the flashback that it had been a very rough time. The Guardians offered Walks immortality so he could fight Clorgbane every 157 years when the cosmic cycle brings him back. Walks accepted. Not because appealing, not because he wanted to live forever. He accepted because he had nothing left to live for, and fighting Clorgbane was the only way he could honor Mona's sacrifice. The deal came with conditions. Walks had to change his name to Skips because he vowed to skip for the rest of eternity, so he would never forget the memories he had with Mona. He also had to perform a ceremonial spirit dance every single birthday in front of the Guardians of Eternal Youth, or his immortality would be stripped away. So Skips became immortal, not out of desire, out of grief and obligation. That was over 500 years ago. Skips has been alive since at least the late 1700s or early 1800s. The show includes flashback scenes of Skips appearing in different historical periods. He worked as a medic during the Revolutionary War in 1783. He appeared in 1879. He appeared in 1910. In every era, he looks exactly the same. White fur, tired eyes, the same middle-aged Yeti who never changes. The show also confirms that Skips has fought Clorgbane multiple times across the centuries. Every 157 years, Clorgbane returns, and Skips has to defeat him, or the world ends. That means Skips has been fighting the same battle over and over for half a millennium. He cannot retire. He cannot move on. His entire existence is locked into this cycle of waiting for Clorgbane to show up, defeating him, and then waiting another 157 years for the cycle to repeat. That is not an adventure. That is monotony stretched across centuries. The immortality itself strips Skips of any chance at a normal life. He cannot die of natural causes. He does not age. He stays frozen at whatever physical state he was in when the Guardians granted him eternal youth. The episode Bald Spot reveals that Skips has been dealing with a bald spot for 400 years. He mentions it took him that long to get used to being bald. 400 years. Think about that. Skips has lived through 4 centuries of human history while dealing with the same cosmetic insecurity. That detail is played for laughs, but it also highlights how absurdly long Skips has been alive. Most people do not live to see 1 century. Skips has lived through 5 of them and counting. He has seen entire eras rise and fall. He has watched technological revolutions, cultural shifts, wars, plagues, and every other major historical event unfold while he remains the same person, doing the same job in the same body with the same curse. The loneliness of immortality becomes brutally clear when you consider everyone Skips has lost. Mona died in the 1800s. Tecmo, his storm-chasing friend from his youth, is gone. The show never specifies when Tecmo died, but the fact that he never appears in the present day confirms he did not survive to modern times. Skips has been working at the park for at least 2 centuries, according to some sources. That means he has watched generations of park employees come and go. He has seen co-workers grow old and die while he stays the same. He has probably attended more funerals than most people can imagine. And the worst part is that Skips cannot even talk about most of this with the current park crew. Mordecai and Rigby treat Skips like the wise, immortal guy who always has the answer. They do not understand the weight he carries. They do not know what it feels like to bury everyone you have ever cared about and then keep going because you have no other choice. The way Skips behaves throughout the series reflects this exhaustion. He is calm, serious, stoic, and emotionally distant. He rarely smiles. He does not get excited about things. He speaks in short, matter-of-fact sentences. He solves problems because that is what he does, but he does not seem particularly invested in the drama or chaos around him. Skips has the energy of someone who has seen it all before, and he literally has. The show constantly puts Mordecai and Rigby in situations that involve supernatural threats, interdimensional portals, ancient curses, and cosmic entities. For Skips, none of this is new. He has dealt with this kind of nonsense for centuries. The stakes feel lower when you know you are going to outlive the problem no matter what happens. Skips helps his friends because he is loyal, and because solving problems is how he passes the time. But there is no sense that any of this actually matters to him on a deep level. He is going through the motions because the motions are all he has left. The finale makes this curse devastatingly explicit. After Pop sacrifices himself to save the universe and the park crew returns to Earth, everyone goes their separate ways and builds new lives. Mordecai becomes an artist and eventually marries Steph. Rigby marries Eileen and has 2 daughters. Muscleman and Starla have a bunch more kids. High Five Ghost and Celia become DJs in Prague and have a son. Benson marries Pam and continues running the park with a new crew of employees. 25 years pass. Everyone ages. Everyone changes. Everyone moves forward. Then the finale shows the reunion at the park, and there is Skips. He looks exactly the same. Not a single difference. Same white fur, same tired eyes, same jeans. The only change is that he traded his regular jeans for jean shorts. That is it. Everyone else has gray hair and wrinkles and kids and decades of life experience. Skips is frozen. He did not get to age. He did not get to change. He did not get to move on. He is still working at the park alongside Benson, training a new generation of groundskeepers who will eventually leave or die just like Mordecai and Rigby did. The show includes a piece of fan art that became a meme, which captures this tragedy perfectly. The image shows the park crew sitting on a hill together in one frame. The second frame shows Skips sitting alone on the same hill surrounded by gravestones. The fan art is not canon, but it reflects what fans immediately understood about Skips' immortality. Everyone he knows is going to die. Skips will attend their funerals. He will bury Mordecai. He will bury Rigby. He will bury Benson. He will bury Muscle Man and High Five Ghost and everyone else. Then he will keep living. He will meet new people. He will form new bonds. And then those people will die too. The cycle never ends. Skips is not blessed with eternal life. He is condemned to eternal loss. The cosmic balance element makes it even worse. Skips does not just have immortality. He has obligations tied to that immortality. He has to perform a spirit dance every birthday or lose his eternal youth. That means every single year, Skips has to go through a ritual that reminds him he is not like everyone else. He cannot skip his birthday. He cannot forget. The Guardians of Eternal Youth are not his friends. They are his jailers. They granted him immortality not as a gift, but as a contract. Skips gets to live forever in exchange for fighting Clorgbane and performing the dance. If he stops, he loses everything. But if he continues, he loses everything anyway, because everyone around him dies while he stays the same. There is no winning scenario. Skips is trapped. The show also hints that Skips is aware of how cursed his existence is. In the episode Over the Top, Skips arm wrestles death for Rigby's soul after Rigby dies from eating too many wings. Skips wins and brings Rigby back to life. Death is frustrated because Skips' immortality makes Death's job harder. Death is supposed to collect souls when their time comes, but Skips does not have a time. Skips exists outside the natural order. That creates tension between them, but it also reveals something important. Skips has a complicated relationship with death. He does not fear death because death cannot claim him, but he also cannot embrace death because the Guardians will not let him go. Skips is stuck in a liminal space where he is neither fully alive in the way mortals are alive, nor able to die and find peace. He just continues. Forever. The episodes that show Skips' past consistently depict him as happier before he became immortal. Walks was reckless and immature, but he was also full of life. He laughed, he took risks, he fell in love, he had hope. After Mona died and Walks became Skips, all of that disappeared. Skips is calm and wise, but he is also emotionally dead. He carries himself like someone who has already mourned everything worth mourning. He does not form deep attachments because he knows how those attachments end. He does not pursue romance because the only person he ever loved has been dead for over 200 years. He does not dream about the future because the future is just more of the same. Wake up, Skip. Work at the park. Solve problems. Wait for Clorgbane. Perform the dance. Repeat. Skips is not living, he is enduring. The skipping itself is a constant reminder of his curse. Skips never walks, he only skips. Every single movement he makes is tied to the memory of Mona. He vowed to skip for eternity so he would never forget her. That sounds romantic on the surface, but it is actually horrifying. Skips cannot move through the world without being reminded of what he lost. Every step is a memorial. Every skip is a reenactment of the happiness he used to have. He is not honoring Mona's memory. He is torturing himself with it, and he has been doing this for 500 years. Imagine being unable to walk normally ever again because the act of walking would feel like betraying someone who died centuries ago. That is not love. That is trauma calcified into a physical habit that Skips cannot break even if he wanted to. The show never explicitly says Skips wants to die, but it also never shows Skips enjoying his immortality. He does not celebrate his eternal youth. He does not brag about his long life. He does not take advantage of his inability to age by pursuing grand adventures or taking risks. He works at a park. He fixes stuff. He helps his friends. He waits. That is not the behavior of someone who feels blessed. That is the behavior of someone who is resigned to their fate. Skips accepted immortality because he had no other option after Mona died. Now he is stuck with the consequences. He cannot undo the deal. He cannot quit. He cannot opt out. All he can do is keep going and hope that somehow, someday, the cycle will end. But the show makes it clear that the cycle will not end. Skips will outlive everyone. He will remain at the park training new crews. He will fight Clorgbane again in another 157 years. He will perform the spirit dance on his next birthday. And the birthday after that. And the one after that. Forever. The tragedy of Skips is that he is the most capable and reliable person in the entire show, but his capability comes at the cost of everything that makes life worth living. Skips has knowledge because he has lived long enough to accumulate it. He has strength because the Guardians enhanced him. He has wisdom because he has watched empires rise and fall. But he does not have love. He does not have change. He does not have the possibility of a different future. He is functionally a ghost haunting his own life. The regular show finale ends with Pops watching his friends from heaven on a tape labeled Regular Show. Pops gets to rest. Pops gets to watch from a distance and feel satisfied that his sacrifice mattered. Skips does not get that. Skips has to keep living. He has to keep watching people leave. He has to keep being the one who stays behind. That is the price of immortality. Not power, not glory, just an eternity of watching everyone you care about disappear while you remain frozen in place with nothing but memories and obligations. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the Singularity Theory. Regular Show is called Regular Show, but the one thing it absolutely never is at any point across 8 seasons and 254 episodes is regular. Every single episode follows the same pattern. Mordecai and Rigby get assigned a basic task. Set up chairs, fix a broken gutter, get rid of a couch, clean the park bathrooms. The kind of mundane work that groundskeepers actually do at city parks. Then something happens. A supernatural entity shows up. A magical object gets activated. A portal opens. Reality starts breaking. What began as normal work suddenly becomes a life or death situation involving cosmic forces, interdimensional threats, time travel, and existential danger. This happens so consistently and so frequently that fans have developed a theory that explains why everything in Regular Show's universe is so unstable. The theory is that the entire show takes place inside a singularity or a broken simulation where the fundamental rules of physics and logic are glitching. Reality is not supposed to work the way it works in Regular Show. The fact that it does suggests something is fundamentally wrong with the universe itself. The basic premise of the show supports this reading. Mordecai and Rigby work at a park. Their boss is a sentient gumball machine. One of their co-workers is an immortal yeti. Another co-worker is a ghost. The park owner is a man with a giant lollipop for a head. None of this is ever explained. The show treats all of these things as completely normal. Nobody questions why Benson is a gumball machine. Nobody asks why Skips is immortal. Nobody finds it strange that High Five Ghost is literally a floating ghost with no corporeal form. The baseline reality of Regular Show is already warped, Before any supernatural chaos starts happening, the world itself is already operating on logic that does not make sense. That is not how physics works. That is not how biology works. That is how a broken simulation works. The rules are bent from the start because the system running the simulation is malfunctioning. The show's formula proves this theory. Every episode begins with something normal.
Mordecai and Rigby are told to set up chairs for a company event.
That is a realistic task. That is something actual groundskeepers would be asked to do. Then the escalation begins. Mordecai and Rigby do not want to set up chairs, so they try to find a shortcut. They discover a book that teaches them how to summon a magical chair entity. The chair entity shows up and starts causing chaos. Reality warps around the entity's presence. Physics stops working correctly. The park becomes a battleground. By the end of the episode, Mordecai and Rigby have fought the chair entity, saved the park from destruction, and completed their original task. Then, everything resets. The next episode begins with another normal task and another reality-breaking escalation. This pattern repeats constantly. The fact that mundane actions always lead to catastrophic supernatural consequences suggests that the fabric of reality in this universe is paper thin. One wrong move and the whole thing tears open. The show features temporal anomalies constantly. Time travel happens multiple times across the series. Characters meet their past selves. Characters meet their future selves. Entire episodes are built around time loops where the same events repeat over and over until someone figures out how to break the cycle. The episode, A Skips in Time, features teenage skips from the 1700s crash landing in the present day via a time-traveling hot air balloon. Nobody questions this. The show treats time travel as something that just happens. The episode, It's Time, involves Mordecai accidentally creating a time vortex by lying about being an astronaut. The lie becomes so powerful that reality itself starts bending to accommodate it. That is not how lies work. That is how a broken system works. The simulation cannot distinguish between truth and fiction, so it processes both the same way and creates glitches. Regular Show, the movie, makes the singularity theory even more explicit. The entire plot of the movie revolves around time travel and catastrophic timeline damage. Future Rigby travels back in time to the present and reveals that Mordecai and Rigby accidentally created a time-nado when they were in high school. The time-nado is a tornado that can travel through space and time. It is actively tearing apart the fabric of reality. The movie confirms that this was caused by Mordecai and Rigby building a time machine for their high school science project, and the time machine exploding. A high school science project should not be capable of creating a rift in space-time that threatens the entire universe. But in Regular Show's universe, it did, because the universe is not stable. The rules of physics do not hold. Cause and effect are broken. Two teenagers built a crude time machine out of household materials, and it shattered reality. That only makes sense if reality was already fragile enough to shatter. The movie also features multiple timelines colliding. Future Mordecai and future Rigby exist simultaneously with present Mordecai and present Rigby. Past Mordecai and past Rigby also exist at the same time. Multiple versions of the same people occupy the same space without causing a paradox, until they do cause a paradox. Father Time shows up and explains that the time-nado is destroying him because time itself is falling apart. The cosmic entity responsible for maintaining the flow of time is being torn to pieces by a malfunction caused by two idiot teenagers. That is not a functional universe. That is a universe that is barely holding itself together. The fact that Mordecai and Rigby are able to fix the time-nado by using plutonium from a time machine to destroy it does not make the situation better. It confirms that the rules governing their reality are so unstable that you can just throw energy at a problem and hope it works. And it does work.
Because the simulation accepts whatever input it receives and processes it, even if the input makes no logical sense. The show constantly features dimensional rifts and reality tiers. Characters regularly travel to other dimensions. Hell is a real place that characters visit multiple times. The afterlife is real, and death is a recurring character who challenges people to contests. Heaven is real, and characters can see it. Alternate dimensions exist, and characters can access them through portals that open randomly. The episode Exit 9B involves a villain named Garrett Bobby Ferguson Jr. using a magical keyboard to bring back every villain the park crew has ever defeated. These villains all come from different dimensions, different time periods, and different planes of existence. They all show up at the same time in the same place because GBF Jr. pressed some keys on a keyboard. That is not how dimensions work. That is how a buggy system works. The keyboard acts as a command input, and the simulation executes the command without checking if the command makes sense. Space warps are also common. The park itself warps constantly. Rooms appear that were not there before. The house expands and contracts based on what the episode needs. Characters travel to the moon multiple times by accident. The episode The Power features Mordecai and Rigby playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets an old chair. The game escalates until they are floating in space, surrounded by cosmic energy. They did not leave Earth. They did not get in a spaceship. They just kept playing rock, paper, scissors, and reality warped around them until they were in space. That is not how space works. That is how a glitching simulation works. The system could not process the infinite loop of rock, paper, scissors, so it started generating errors, and those errors manifested as spatial distortion. The show never explains why any of this happens. There is no in-universe justification for why the park experiences constant supernatural attacks. There is no reason given for why time travel is possible, or why dimensions overlap, or why reality tears open so easily. The show just presents these things as facts of life and moves on. That lack of explanation is itself evidence for the singularity theory. If the show took place in a normal universe with consistent rules, the characters would ask questions. They would want to know why a sentient gumball machine exists. They would want to know why portals to hell keep opening in the park. They would investigate. But they do not. They accept everything as normal because in their reality, it is normal. The simulation has always been broken, so the inhabitants of the simulation have no frame of reference for what a functional reality looks like. The characters themselves seem aware on some level that their reality is unstable. Skips, in particular, acts like someone who knows the rules do not apply. He has solutions to supernatural problems because he has seen similar problems before. He knows how to close dimensional rifts. He knows how to defeat cosmic entities. He knows how to fix time paradoxes. Skips operates like someone who has access to the source code. He understands that reality is malleable, and he uses that understanding to manipulate outcomes. Benson also seems aware. He constantly yells at Mordecai and Rigby for causing problems, but he never seems surprised by the problems themselves. A demon shows up at the park, and Benson is annoyed, but not shocked. A time traveler appears, and Benson is frustrated but not confused. Benson has been working at the park for years. He knows that reality in this place does not work correctly. He has accepted it. The finale makes the singularity theory even stronger. The entire final season revolves around Pops and Anti-Pops fighting for control of the universe. Pops is revealed to be a cosmic entity who represents pure good. Anti-Pops represents pure evil. They have fought each other every 14 billion years across infinite timelines. Every time they fight, the universe gets destroyed and resets. That is the baseline structure of regular shows' reality. It is a loop. The universe is not permanent. It is not stable. It is designed to reset every 14 billion years. That is not how a natural universe works. That is how a simulation works. The simulation runs for 14 billion years, encounters a critical error when Pops and Anti-Pops fight, crashes, and reboots. The fact that Pops is able to break the cycle by sacrificing himself suggests that the simulation can be altered. The reset is not inevitable. It is a programmed outcome. Pops finds a way to override the program and create a permanent timeline. But the fact that the override was necessary confirms that the default state of the universe is cyclical destruction. The show also features reality-warping objects constantly. The Fists of Justice grant Skips superhuman power. The Maximum Glove controls video games. A magical keyboard can summon anything. A cursed videotape can trap people in alternate dimensions. A sentient brain can control minds. These objects exist without explanation. They show up, cause chaos, and then disappear or get destroyed. Nobody asks where they come from. Nobody questions why a keyboard has magical properties. The objects function like cheat codes. They bypass the normal rules of the simulation and allow whoever uses them to manipulate reality directly. The problem is that the objects are unstable. Using them causes glitches. The keyboard summons things that should not exist. The cursed videotape creates alternate timelines. The brain creates mind control loops. Every object that breaks the rules also breaks reality a little bit more. The park itself seems to be a focal point for the instability. Most of the reality warping events happen at or near the park. Other locations in the show's universe seem relatively normal. The city where the park is located functions like a regular city. People go to work, they drive cars, they live in houses. But the park is different. The park is where dimensions overlap. The park is where portals open. The park is where time travelers arrive. The park is where cosmic battles happen. This suggests that the park occupies a unique position in the simulation. It is either a central node where errors accumulate, or it is a testing ground where the simulation runs experimental code. Either way, the park is not a normal location. It is a glitch zone. And Mordecai and Rigby work there every day surrounded by constant reality failures. The lack of consequences also supports the singularity theory. Mordecai and Rigby cause massive damage constantly. They destroy property, they endanger lives, they tear holes in reality. But they never face lasting consequences. Benson threatens to fire them but never does. The park gets destroyed and rebuilt multiple times but always returns to its original state. Characters die and come back to life. Relationships end and resume. Nothing is permanent except the cycle. That is not realistic. That is how a simulation handles errors. The system detects a problem, runs a repair protocol, and restores everything to default settings. The characters remember what happened, but the world itself resets. That is why Mordecai and Rigby can cause apocalyptic disasters every week and still show up to work the next week like nothing happened. The simulation patches the damage overnight. The show's relationship with logic is also broken. Characters make decisions that do not make sense. They pursue goals that contradict their stated motivations. They survive situations that should kill them. They fail at tasks that should be easy. The internal consistency of character behavior and plot progression is warped. This could be explained as bad writing, but it happens too consistently to be accidental. The characters act illogically because logic itself does not function correctly in their universe. Cause and effect are suggestions, not rules. A character can want something, do everything wrong, and still achieve their goal because the simulation processed their intent and generated an outcome based on narrative convenience rather than realistic consequences. The singularity theory explains everything. It explains why a gumball machine is sentient. It explains why time travel is common. It explains why reality tears open constantly. It explains why objects have impossible properties. It explains why the park is a chaos magnet. It explains why nothing has permanent consequences. It explains why the universe resets every 14 billion years. Regular show does not take place in a functional reality. It takes place inside a broken system where the rules governing physics, time, space, and logic are malfunctioning. The simulation is running, but it is running incorrectly. Errors accumulate. Glitches manifest as supernatural events. The code cannot distinguish between possible and impossible, so it processes both the same way. Mordecai and Rigby are not causing chaos. They are exposing the chaos that already exists. Every time they take a shortcut or avoid work or try to entertain themselves, they interact with the system in a way the system cannot handle, and the system breaks, and reality warps, and the universe comes closer to total collapse. That is why everything in Regular Show is so unstable, because the foundation itself is unstable. The show is not happening in a universe, it is happening in a singularity, and the singularity is falling apart. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that they're just normal people on heavy drugs. Regular Show has a reputation as one of Cartoon Network's most surreal and unpredictable shows. The premise sounds simple enough. A blue jay and a raccoon work as groundskeepers at a city park. They slack off constantly, and their laziness causes supernatural disasters. But fans have noticed something strange about the show's visual style and character design. Mordecai is a bird. Rigby is a raccoon. Benson is a sentient gumball machine. Pops is a man with a lollipop for a head. Skips is a yeti. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost are exactly what their names suggest. None of these characters are human, but they all act like humans. They work human jobs. They deal with human problems. They have human relationships. They behave like 20-something slackers navigating the frustrations of dead-end employment and directionless adulthood. So why are they designed as animals and objects instead of people? One theory proposes a dark answer. Everyone in Regular Show is actually a normal human. We just see them as anthropomorphic weirdos because we are experiencing the world through an intoxicated perspective. The entire show is a drug trip, and the characters we see on screen are hallucinations. The theory has serious canonical support. Regular Show is directly based on a student film called 2 in the AM PM that J.G. Quintel made while attending Cal Arts. The short film is about 2 gas station clerks working the graveyard shift on Halloween. The taller clerk offers the shorter clerk some candy. The shorter clerk eats it. Then the taller clerk casually mentions that he put drugs in the candy, specifically marijuana. The shorter clerk freaks out. Then the taller clerk admits it was not actually marijuana. It was acid, LSD. The shorter clerk panics even harder because acid is significantly more intense than weed. But it is too late. The acid kicks in. Both clerks start hallucinating. They transform into different shapes and creatures. The shorter clerk becomes a gumball machine that looks exactly like Benson from Regular Show. The taller clerk becomes a blue jay that looks exactly like Mordecai. They also morph into other forms, including Pops, a fly, dolphins, a polar bear, and various abstract shapes. The entire short film is about 2 normal humans tripping on LSD and perceiving themselves and their surroundings as bizarre animated characters. This is not speculation. This is confirmed canon. J.G. Quintel took the character designs and concepts from 2 in the AM PM and used them to create Regular Show. Mordecai and Benson are directly lifted from the acid trip short. The show reuses visual gags and character dynamics from the original film. The connection is explicit. Quintel himself has acknowledged that Regular Show evolved from his student work. The only difference is that 2 in the AM PM is rated for adults and includes explicit drug use and profanity, while Regular Show is sanitized for Cartoon Network's TV PG rating. But the underlying concept remains. The characters in 2 in the AM PM are humans who hallucinate being cartoon creatures. The characters in Regular Show are cartoon creatures who behave like humans. The theory suggests that regular show is just a continuation of the same acid trip. The drug never wore off. The hallucination became permanent. The show's constant references to alcohol and partying support this reading. Regular show is technically a kids' show, but it is filled with adult themes that would make more sense if the characters were actual 20-somethings instead of talking animals. Characters drink constantly. They do not call it beer because Cartoon Network would not allow that. Instead, they drink soda and eat chicken wings. But the show treats these items exactly like alcohol. Characters get drunk off wings. They binge on soda until they act wasted. They throw parties. They go clubbing. They deal with hangovers. The episode Over the Top features Rigby eating so many chicken wings that he literally dies, and Skips has to arm wrestle Death to bring him back to life. That is not normal behavior for a raccoon. That is the behavior of a human binge eater who went too hard at a wing restaurant and suffered catastrophic health consequences. The show includes direct references to drinking culture that only make sense if the characters are humans pretending to be animals. The episode Guys Night revolves around Pops trying to prove he is one of the guys by drinking an entire gallon of milk in under an hour. This is a classic college drinking challenge, but with milk substituted for beer. The episode Party Pete features Mordecai and Rigby throwing a party and desperately trying to make it cool enough to attract guests. The party fails until they hire Party Pete, a German-accented party expert who shows up with attractive women and transforms their lame gathering into a rager. That entire premise is lifted straight from 20-something party culture. Animals do not throw parties. Humans do. The episode treats the party like a social status competition, where success is measured by how many attractive people show up and how wild things get. That is human behavior filtered through a cartoon lens. The characters act like degenerates. Mordecai and Rigby are constantly lazy. They avoid work. They lie to their boss. They prioritize entertainment over responsibility. They make impulsive decisions that endanger themselves and others. They pursue romantic relationships with the emotional maturity of teenagers despite being 23 years old. Muscle Man is gross and inappropriate. He makes crude jokes. He shows off his body. He acts like a frat bro. High Five Ghost enables him. Benson is a stressed-out middle manager who threatens to fire people constantly, but never follows through. Skips is the wise, older figure who has seen everything and solves problems with experience rather than effort. Pops is rich and sheltered and completely disconnected from reality. Every single one of these character archetypes maps directly onto real human personalities. They are not animal behaviors, they are human behaviors. A blue jay would not care about impressing a robin at a coffee shop. A raccoon would not get jealous over a job promotion. A gumball machine would not experience workplace stress. But humans care about all of these things. The show is about humans. It just depicts them as non-human entities. The theory explains the visual disconnect. If the characters are normal people on heavy drugs, then the animal and object designs make sense. They are not literally a bird and a raccoon and a gumball machine. They are humans who perceive themselves that way because their brains are malfunctioning. Mordecai sees himself as a blue jay. Rigby sees himself as a raccoon. Benson sees himself as a gumball machine. Everyone in their shared reality is experiencing the same hallucination. That is why nobody questions it. Nobody finds it strange that their boss is a sentient piece of candy dispensing equipment, because within the drug-induced reality, that is normal. The intoxicated perspective has replaced objective reality. The characters have been tripping for so long that they no longer remember what they actually look like. The hallucination has become their baseline. This also explains why the show's reality is so unstable. Every episode features supernatural chaos that escalates from mundane tasks. Mordecai and Rigby are told to set up chairs, and somehow that leads to summoning a reality-warping entity. They play rock, paper, scissors and end up in space. They eat chicken wings and one of them dies. These are not realistic consequences. These are the consequences of a broken mind trying to process normal events through a distorted filter. The drug trip is causing reality to malfunction.
What might actually be happening is that Mordecai and Rigby are sitting in their apartment playing video games while high, and their intoxicated brains are interpreting the game as an actual interdimensional adventure. Or they go to a party, and their altered perception makes the social dynamics feel like a life or death battle. The supernatural elements are not real. They are hallucinations layered on top of boring, mundane reality. The connection to 2 in the AM/PM is not just thematic, it is literal. The student film establishes that LSD causes people to see themselves as cartoon characters. Regular Show features those exact same cartoon characters living full lives. The logical conclusion is that Regular Show takes place inside the same hallucination that started in 2 in the AM/PM. The acid trip never ended. The clerks are still tripping. Years have passed in their altered perception, but in reality, they might still be standing in that gas station on Halloween night, frozen in a drug-induced stupor. Or the trip damaged their brains permanently, and now they genuinely cannot distinguish between their hallucinated identities and their real identities. Either way, the show is not depicting objective reality. It is depicting a subjective, drug-fueled delusion. The show's aesthetic supports this. Regular Show has a deliberately crude and simplistic art style. Characters are drawn with minimal detail. Backgrounds are flat and generic. The animation is choppy. The color palette is muted. Everything looks slightly off. That is not budget constraints. That is an intentional artistic choice. The show looks the way it does because it is trying to replicate the visual distortions of an acid trip. LSD does not make the world look photorealistic and detailed. It makes things look warped and abstract. Colors shift, shapes morph, reality becomes cartoonish. Regular Show's art style matches that description perfectly. The characters look like crude drawings because they are being perceived by a brain that can no longer process visual information correctly. The show's obsession with nostalgia also fits the drug theory. Regular Show is packed with references to 1980s culture. The characters listen to 80s music. They use outdated technology. They reference movies and TV shows from that era. Quintel has stated that he included these references because the 80s had a big influence on him growing up. But within the context of the drug theory, the 80s references take on a different meaning. If the characters are stuck in a permanent hallucination, then their perception of time might be frozen. They might be reliving the same decade over and over because their brains latched onto that period and cannot move forward. The nostalgia is not just aesthetic, it is symptomatic. The characters are trapped in a mental loop where past and present blur together. That is a known effect of long-term drug use. Memory becomes unreliable. Chronology breaks down. The mind retreats into familiar patterns. The lack of consequences supports this reading. Mordecai and Rigby cause massive destruction constantly, but they never face real punishment. Benson threatens to fire them every episode but never does. The park gets destroyed and rebuilt. Characters die and come back. Nothing sticks. That is not how reality works. That is how a hallucination works. The events in the show are not real events with real consequences. They are fantasies playing out in damaged minds. When the trip ends or shifts, the negative outcomes reset. The characters might believe they got fired or killed, but when they sober up slightly or shift into a different phase of the hallucination, everything goes back to normal. The lack of permanence is evidence that none of it is actually happening. The show's treatment of relationships also makes more sense through this lens. Mordecai spends seasons pining after Margaret. He finally gets her. He loses her. He moves on to CJ. He loses her too. He ends up alone for years. That progression is painful and realistic if Mordecai is a human dealing with actual romantic rejection. It is bizarre if Mordecai is literally a blue jay.
Birds do not experience multi-year romantic arcs with complex emotional baggage. Humans do. The entire Margaret and CJ storyline is clearly written for a human character navigating the messiness of 20-something relationships. The fact that it is depicted using a blue jay and a robin is just visual coding. The underlying story is about a guy who cannot get his love life together because he is emotionally immature and self-sabotaging. That is a human problem. The bird designs are the hallucination obscuring the real human underneath. The show's workplace dynamics are also distinctly human. Benson is not a gumball machine managing a park. He is a middle manager dealing with incompetent employees at a job he hates. His stress is real. His frustration is real. His inability to actually fire the people causing problems is real. That is human workplace dysfunction. Skips is not an immortal yeti. He is the older, experienced coworker who has been at the company forever and knows how everything works. Muscle Man is not a green-skinned freak. He is the annoying guy who makes inappropriate jokes and refuses to take anything seriously. All of these character types exist in every workplace. The animal and object designs are just a distorted way of visualizing normal human coworkers. The theory also explains the show's tonal inconsistency. Regular show swings wildly between goofy comedy and genuine emotional depth. One episode is about Mordecai and Rigby fighting a sentient video game. The next episode is about Mordecai dealing with crippling heartbreak after Margaret rejects him. The tonal shifts are jarring if you view the show as a straightforward cartoon. But they make sense if the show is depicting a mind shifting between different emotional states while intoxicated. The goofy episodes represent moments when the characters are riding the high and everything feels absurd and funny. The emotional episodes represent moments when the drugs wear off slightly and reality crashes back in. The intoxicated brain cannot maintain a consistent tone because it is constantly oscillating between euphoria and despair. The finale undermines the theory slightly, but also reinforces it. The show ends with Pops sacrificing himself to break a cosmic cycle, and everyone moving on with their lives. Mordecai becomes an artist. Rigby marries Eileen. Everyone gets closure and happy endings. That seems like a definitive conclusion that contradicts the idea of an endless drug trip. But it could also be interpreted as the final stage of the hallucination, before the brain shuts down completely. The characters get their happy endings because the person experiencing the trip is losing consciousness. The brain is generating a comforting narrative to ease the transition into whatever comes next. The finale is not proof that the show is real. It is proof that the trip is ending. Regular Show is not a show about talking animals working at a park. It is a show about normal humans whose perception of reality has been permanently altered by substance abuse. The anthropomorphic designs are hallucinations. The supernatural chaos is the brain struggling to process ordinary events through a distorted filter. The emotional storylines are real human problems obscured by cartoon imagery. The entire show is 2 in the AM/PM stretched across 8 seasons. The acid trip that started in that gas station never ended. Mordecai and Rigby are not a blue jay and a raccoon. They are 2 guys who ate bad candy and have been tripping ever since. Everything we see on screen is what they see while intoxicated. The real versions of these characters are probably still standing in that gas station, staring at each other with dilated pupils, wondering when the world is going to stop looking like a cartoon. But it never will. The hallucination is permanent. Regular Show is the inside of a broken mind that can no longer distinguish between reality and fantasy, and we are watching it happen in real time. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that High Five Ghost died young and never moved on. Regular Show features a cast of bizarre characters working at a city park. A blue jay, a raccoon, a gumball machine, a yeti, a lollipop man, and a ghost. Not a ghost-themed character, not someone who acts ghostly, an actual, literal ghost. His name is High Five Ghost. He flows. He is semi-transparent. He phases through walls. He is visibly deceased. and nobody ever questions this. The other characters treat his existence as completely normal. Benson does not ask why he hired a dead person. Mordecai and Rigby do not wonder how a ghost can operate a lawnmower. Muscle Man does not find it strange that his best friend is the disembodied spirit of someone who used to be alive. High Five Ghost just exists as part of the park crew, and everyone accepts it. But the show provides just enough information about his backstory to suggest something deeply sad. High Five Ghost is not just a ghost, he is the ghost of someone who died young and never moved on. He is stuck, and the people around him either do not realize it or have chosen not to acknowledge it. The show confirms that High Five Ghost was not always a ghost. The episode Exit 9B includes flashback scenes showing High Five Ghost as a baby. He appears as a baby ghost being held by what looks like a human mother. That image alone raises massive questions. If High Five Ghost was a baby ghost, then he either died as an infant or he was born as a ghost to a human parent. Either scenario is horrifying. Then the show reveals that High Five Ghost attended high school. More flashbacks show him as a teenager with shaggy, dark brown hair and a green army jacket. He looked human. He had a physical body. He walked on legs instead of floating. He had a normal teenage life. Then, at some point between high school and his current job at the park, he became a ghost. The show never explains when or how this happened. It never addresses the fact that High Five Ghost used to be alive and is now dead. It just presents him as a ghost in the present day and moves on. The fact that High Five Ghost has a family makes this even more tragic. The episode See You There introduces his older brother Low Five Ghost. Low Five Ghost is also a ghost, but he works as a police officer and lives a relatively normal life. He has an apartment, he has a job, he functions in society. The same episode introduces their father, who is also a ghost. The entire ghost family is dead, but they all still exist. They all still interact with the living world. They have jobs and relationships and routines. They are ghosts who never crossed over. The show reveals that High Five Ghost's father is the only one in the ghost family who knows how to change people from ghosts back into their normal form. This is a massive piece of lore that the show drops casually and never explores. There is a way to reverse being a ghost. The ghost family knows how to do it, but they do not do it. High Five Ghost remains a ghost. His brother remains a ghost. Their father remains a ghost. They have the ability to return to life, but they choose not to. Or they cannot. The show never clarifies which. This suggests that the ghost family died together, or died under circumstances that prevent them from moving on. If High Five Ghost's father knows how to turn ghosts back into normal form, but has not done it for himself or his sons, then there must be a reason. Maybe the transformation only works under specific conditions. Maybe it requires something they do not have access to. Maybe there is a cost they are unwilling to pay. Or maybe they died so long ago that their original bodies no longer exist and there is nothing to return to. The show implies that being a ghost is a permanent state for the ghost family. They are not haunting anyone. They are not seeking revenge. They are not trying to resolve unfinished business. They are just existing as ghosts in a world designed for the living. They have adapted. They have built lives as ghosts, but they are still fundamentally dead. High Five Ghost's behavior supports the theory that he is stuck. He is quiet. He rarely speaks in the early seasons. He stays in the background. He follows Muscle Man around and supports whatever Muscle Man does, but he does not have much of an independent identity. He exists primarily as Muscle Man's sidekick. This makes sense if High Five Ghost is someone who died young and never had the chance to fully develop as a person. He got stuck at a certain age or a certain stage of life and never progressed beyond it. He works at the park not because he has career ambitions, but because he has nowhere else to go. The living world keeps moving forward, and High Five Ghost moves with it out of necessity, but he is not really part of it. He is adjacent to life. He observes it. He participates when invited. but he does not drive his own narrative. The show also reveals that High Five Ghost is deeply uncomfortable with death. In the episode Trucker Hall of Fame, Muscle Man's father dies, and the park crew attends his funeral. High Five Ghost cries throughout the entire event. Benson specifically mentions that High Five Ghost does not handle death well. This is strange. High Five Ghost is literally dead. He is a ghost. He has already experienced death personally. He should be more comfortable with the concept than anyone else. But he is not. He is devastated by death. He cries at funerals. He gets visibly upset when people die. This reaction makes sense if High Five Ghost's death was traumatic. If he died suddenly or violently or under circumstances that left him with unresolved trauma, then being confronted with death again would trigger that trauma. High Five Ghost is not at peace with being dead. He is still processing it. Every funeral he attends forces him to relive whatever happened to him. The episode, The Postcard, provides more insight into High Five Ghost's emotional life. The episode reveals that High Five Ghost met a human woman named Celia 4 years ago at a coffee shop. They connected. They had chemistry. But Celia had to leave to finish her studies in Prague. They agreed to stay in touch by sending a postcard after 4 years. High Five Ghost spent 4 years waiting for that postcard. When he finally receives it, he cannot remember where they agreed to meet. He spends the entire episode trying to find her. He eventually succeeds and they reunite. This storyline is presented as romantic, but it is also deeply sad. High Five Ghost is a ghost. Celia is human. Their relationship has a built-in expiration date. Celia will age. She will grow old. She will eventually die. High Five Ghost will not. He is frozen. He will remain exactly as he is now for potentially centuries. If High Five Ghost and Celia build a life together, he will have to watch her age and die while he stays young and ghostly. He has already experienced death once. Now he will experience it again through her. That is not a happy ending. That is a preview of inevitable loss. The show's finale confirms that High Five Ghost never ages. The finale includes a time jump showing where everyone ends up 25 years after the main events of the series. Mordecai has gray hair and wrinkles. Rigby looks older. Muscle Man has aged significantly, but High Five Ghost looks exactly the same. He has not changed at all. He is still the same small white ghost with a hand sticking out of his head. The finale mentions that he grew a goatee during the time skip, but by the reunion he looks identical to his younger self. This makes sense if High Five Ghost is stuck in the state he was in when he died. He cannot age because aging requires a living body. He is preserved at whatever age he was when he became a ghost. Everyone around him moves forward through time, and High Five Ghost stays frozen. He will outlive all of his friends. He will attend their funerals. He will be left behind. Again. The fact that nobody questions High Five Ghost's existence is also telling. The other characters never ask how he became a ghost. They never ask if he is okay. They never offer condolences for his death. They just treat him like a normal coworker. This could be interpreted as acceptance, but it also reads as avoidance. Nobody wants to acknowledge that High Five Ghost is dead because acknowledging it would make his presence uncomfortable. It is easier to pretend that being a ghost is just another quirky character trait, like being a blue jay or a gumball machine. But it is not the same. Mordecai being a blue jay is a design choice. High Five Ghost being a ghost means he died. That is a fundamentally different situation. The park crew's refusal to address it suggests they either do not understand the implications, or they understand them perfectly and choose to ignore them because the truth is too sad. High Five Ghost's relationship with Muscle Man also takes on a darker tone under this reading. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost are inseparable. They are best friends. They do everything together. Muscle Man constantly makes jokes, and High Five Ghost is the only person who genuinely laughs at them. When Muscle Man gets fired, High Five Ghost quits too.
When Muscle Man needs help,
High Five Ghost is always there. This loyalty is framed as friendship, but it also reads as dependency. High Five Ghost does not have anyone else. His family is also dead. His romantic relationship with Celia is long distance and uncertain. Muscle Man is the only living person who consistently includes him. Without Muscle Man, High Five Ghost would be completely alone. He clings to Muscle Man, not just because they are friends, but because Muscle Man is his anchor to the living world. Muscle Man treats him like a normal person. Muscle Man does not see him as a ghost. Muscle Man sees him as fives. That validation is what keeps High Five Ghost tethered to existence. The show never explains how High Five Ghost died. There are no flashbacks showing his death. There are no episodes dedicated to his backstory. There are no conversations where he opens up about what happened. The show presents his ghost status as a given and expects the audience to accept it without explanation. But the pieces are there if you pay attention. High Five Ghost was alive. He had a human body. He attended high school. He had a family. Then, something happened. He died. His family also died or became ghosts. They did not cross over. They stayed in the living world as ghosts. High Five Ghost got a job at a park. He became friends with Muscle Man. He started dating Celia. He built a life despite being dead. But he is not at peace. He cries at funerals. He gets uncomfortable when people talk about death. He waits 4 years for a postcard from a woman he met once, because that relationship represents hope that he can still connect with the living world in a meaningful way. The tragedy of High Five Ghost is that he is functionally invisible. The show treats him as a background character for most of its run. He does not get many solo episodes. He does not have major character arcs. He exists primarily to support other characters' stories. This mirrors his existence within the show's universe. He is a ghost. He is there but not fully there. He is visible but semi-transparent. He participates in life, but he is not alive. He is stuck in a liminal space between existence and non-existence. He works at a park with living people. He has relationships with living people, but he is not one of them. He is the ghost who hangs around. And everyone has just gotten used to it. The show hints that High Five Ghost is aware of his situation. He does not talk much, but when he does, his comments are often surprisingly insightful. The episode The Button reveals that High Five Ghost is the most logical member of the park crew. He sees situations clearly, he understands consequences, he thinks things through. This suggests that being dead has given him perspective. He has already experienced the worst thing that can happen to a person. Everything else is just details. But that perspective also isolates him. He cannot relate to his co-workers' concerns about career advancement or relationship drama or financial stress, because those problems assume you have a future. High Five Ghost does not have a future. He has an eternal present. He will work at this park forever. He will watch his friends move on. He will remain. The finale shows High Five Ghost becoming a successful DJ with Celia. They tour in Prague. They have a son. This ending is presented as happy, but it also confirms the horror. High Five Ghost has a child. That child is presumably also a ghost or a half-ghost hybrid. Either way, High Five Ghost has reproduced despite being dead. He has created another being who will have to navigate existence as something other than fully alive. The cycle continues. And if that child is mortal, then High Five Ghost will eventually have to watch his own son age and die while he stays frozen. He will bury his child. He will attend another funeral. He will cry again. Because that is what ghosts do. They watch, they wait, they endure. High Five Ghost is not just a quirky character design. He is a person who died young and got stuck. He is someone's son. He is someone's brother. He was someone's high school classmate. Then he died. And instead of moving on to whatever comes next, he stayed. He got a job. He made friends. He found love. He built a life out of death. But he is still dead. He is still a ghost. He is still floating through a world that was not designed for him. And nobody talks about it. Nobody asks if he is okay. Nobody wonders if he wants to move on. They just accept that High Five Ghost is here, and High Five Ghost will always be here because ghosts do not leave. They linger. They haunt. Not in the horror movie sense, in the quiet, sad sense. High Five Ghost haunts the park. He haunts Muscle Man's life. He haunts his own existence. And he will keep haunting long after everyone else is gone. Because that is what happens when you die young and never move on. You get stuck. And High Five Ghost has been stuck for a very long time. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to the theory that Muscle Man is slowly killing himself. Muscle Man is the most overtly self-destructive character in regular show, and the show treats this as comedy. His entire identity revolves around bad decisions. He overeats constantly. He drives recklessly. He pulls dangerous stunts. He lives in filth. He ignores his health. He pushes his body past reasonable limits for laughs. The show frames all of this as harmless fun. Muscle Man is the gross, funny guy who takes off his shirt and yells and makes everyone uncomfortable, but ultimately he is fine. Except he is not fine. The show includes multiple episodes that explicitly confront the fact that Muscle Man's lifestyle is killing him. These episodes are played partly for comedy, but they also contain genuine moments of fear and consequence. Muscle Man is 25 years old. He is obese. He has a terrible diet. He engages in extreme physical challenges despite being in poor health. His living conditions are hazardous. And the show makes it clear that if he does not change, he will die young. This is not subtext. This is text. Muscle Man is slowly killing himself, and everyone around him knows it. But nobody can stop him because Muscle Man's self-destruction is tied to his identity. He cannot be Muscle Man without the behaviors that are destroying him. The most explicit confrontation with Muscle Man's mortality happens in the episode Last Meal. The episode begins with Starla noticing that Muscle Man cannot see his own feet anymore. His stomach has gotten so large that it blocks his view. Starla gently suggests they go on a diet together. Muscle Man agrees because he loves Starla and wants to make her happy. But before he starts the diet, he decides he needs one last day of eating all his favorite foods. He recruits Mordecai, Rigby, and High Five Ghost to help him tour every restaurant he loves and eat everything one final time. The premise is played for laughs. Muscle Man gorging himself on donuts and pizza and wings is presented as a fun montage. But then, the episode takes a dark turn. The final restaurant Muscle Man wants to visit is a hot dog stand. The only way to get a hot dog is to enter an eating contest. Muscle Man signs up. Then, Death shows up. Death rides in on a motorcycle and announces that Muscle Man is going to die in this contest. This is not a joke. Death is a recurring character in regular show, and when he shows up, it means someone is about to die or has already died. Mordecai asks Death what he is doing there, and Death reminds them of a previous episode where he told Muscle Man that he would claim his soul the next time Muscle Man entered a hot dog eating contest. Muscle Man does not remember this. He signed up for the contest casually without realizing he was sealing his fate. Death forces Muscle Man to compete. If Muscle Man refuses to participate, Death will take his soul immediately. So Muscle Man has no choice. He has to eat hot dogs until he either wins or his body gives out. The episode shows Muscle Man struggling. He is sweating. He is in pain. He cannot keep up. Death is using magic to cheat and Muscle Man is losing. Then, Muscle Man's phone rings. It is Starla. She is calling to tell him she is making them a healthy dinner. Muscle Man realizes he is about to die, and the last thing Starla will know is that he lied to her about the diet. Muscle Man makes the decision to tell Starla the truth. He says he is in a hot dog eating contest with Death, and he is about to lose. This moment is played straight. There is no joke. Muscle Man is terrified. He knows he is going to die, and he does not want to die lying to the woman he loves. Starla immediately mobilizes. She shows up at the contest and starts coaching Muscle Man. She tells him he can do this. She believes in him. Muscle Man finds the strength to keep eating. He wins the contest. Death is furious, but he has to honor the terms. Muscle Man survives. But the episode does not end with celebration. It ends with Muscle Man and Starla agreeing to actually go on the diet. The episode makes it clear that Muscle Man came dangerously close to dying, and if Starla had not intervened, he would have. His lifestyle almost killed him. And this is not the first time. The show establishes early on that Muscle Man's eating habits are extreme. The episode Trailer Trashed reveals that Muscle Man won his trailer by winning a hot dog eating contest years ago. He ate twice as much as the runner-up. He used water to help mush the food so he could eat faster. The runner-up, Frank Jones, believed Muscle Man cheated. Frank was so bitter about losing that he faked being a health inspector years later just to get revenge on Muscle Man. This backstory confirms that Muscle Man has been engaging in dangerous eating challenges for years. When winning the hot dog contest was one of the best things that ever happened to him. He got a trailer out of it. But it also established a pattern. Muscle Man equates extreme eating with success. He is proud of his ability to consume massive amounts of food. This pride is killing him. The same episode, Trailer Trashed, also reveals that Muscle Man's living conditions are horrific. A health inspector visits the park and declares that Muscle Man's trailer is so unsanitary that it needs to be condemned and sent to the dump. The park crew goes inside to see why. The trailer is filled with trash. There is garbage everywhere. The episode describes it as a disaster. Muscle Man has been living in filth for years. This is not just laziness. This is a symptom of deeper dysfunction. Muscle Man does not take care of himself. He does not take care of his environment. He lives in squalor because he does not value his own well-being. The trailer is supposed to be his home. It is supposed to be his safe space. Instead, it is a hazard. And Muscle Man does not see a problem with this until external forces threaten to take it away. Muscle Man's body is repeatedly used as a punchline. High-Five Ghost jokes in Last Meal that if Muscle Man's stomach gets any bigger, they will have to add it to the park payroll. This is a joke. Everyone laughs. But it is also a statement of fact. Muscle Man's stomach is so large that it has become its own entity. It is no longer part of his body. It is something separate that he carries around. The joke acknowledges that Muscle Man's weight has reached a point where it is absurd. And absurdity in this context means danger. Muscle Man is not just overweight, he is morbidly obese. His size affects his mobility, it affects his health, it affects his lifespan. And everyone around him knows this, but they treat it as comedy, because addressing it seriously would require confronting accountable truths about Muscle Man's choices and his future. Muscle Man's diet is consistently shown to be terrible. He eats fast food constantly. He eats massive portions. He eats foods that are explicitly described as unhealthy. The show even features a character called the Death Kwon Do Sensei, who runs a pizza and sub shop. This character later appears in an episode where it is revealed that his stomach exploded because he ate a sandwich that was so unhealthy it caused catastrophic organ failure. That character is a parallel to Muscle Man. Both are obese. Both eat extreme amounts of unhealthy food. Both run risks of sudden health collapse. The show uses the sensei as a cautionary tale, but Muscle Man does not learn from it. He continues eating the same way. He continues making the same choices. Because for Muscle Man, food is not just sustenance, it is identity. He is the guy who can eat anything. He is the guy who wins eating contests. He is the guy who does not care about consequences. That identity is more important to him than his health. Muscle Man also engages in dangerous physical stunts, despite being in poor physical condition. He drives recklessly. He is shown speeding and performing dangerous maneuvers in his car. He has interactions with police officers who know him because he is constantly breaking traffic laws. The show treats this as a running gag. Muscle Man is the guy who drives like a maniac, but reckless driving kills people. Muscle Man is not just risking his own life, he is risking the lives of anyone else on the road. His refusal to drive safely is another form of self-destruction. He does not value his safety. He does not value other people's safety. He prioritizes thrill and speed over survival. That is not funny. That is suicidal behavior with collateral damage. Muscle Man's pranks are also dangerous. He is constantly pulling elaborate pranks on his co-workers. Most of these pranks are harmless, but some of them involve real physical risk. He sets up scenarios where people could get hurt. He does not think about consequences. He just wants the laugh. The episode Prankless establishes that Muscle Man is considered one of the greatest pranksters ever. That title comes with a cost. Muscle Man has spent years perfecting pranks that push boundaries. Some of those pranks have probably caused injuries. Some of those pranks have probably gone too far. But Muscle Man keeps doing them because his identity as a prankster is more important than anyone's safety, including his own. The show also reveals that Muscle Man has poor hygiene. Multiple episodes mention that he smells terrible. This is presented as gross-out comedy. Muscle Man is the stinky guy. But chronic poor hygiene is a sign of depression or self-neglect. Muscle Man does not take care of his body. He does not shower regularly. He does not clean his living space. He does not maintain basic standards of personal care. This is not laziness. This is someone who does not believe he deserves to be clean. This is someone who has given up on presenting himself as a functional adult. Muscle Man has accepted that he is gross, and he leans into it because leaning into it means he does not have to try to change. Muscle Man's relationship with Starla is the one thing that motivates him to consider change. Starla loves Muscle Man unconditionally. She thinks he is attractive. She supports him. She wants to build a life with him. But she also recognizes that his lifestyle is unsustainable. The episode Last Meal is initiated by Starla noticing Muscle Man cannot see his feet and suggesting they go on a diet. This is not Starla being controlling. This is Starla trying to save Muscle Man's life. She sees where this is headed. She knows that if Muscle Man continues on his current path, he will die young. She does not want to lose him, so she intervenes, and Muscle Man agrees to try. But the fact that he needs one last binge before starting the diet shows how deeply ingrained his destructive habits are. He cannot just stop. He needs closure. He needs to say goodbye to the foods that have defined him. That is addiction behavior. The show confirms that Muscle Man comes from a family with health issues. The episode Trucker Hall of Fame reveals that Muscle Man's father died. The episode shows Muscle Man grieving at his father's funeral. The details of how Muscle Dad died are not specified, but the episode establishes that Muscle Dad was also obese and had a similar lifestyle to Muscle Man. He ate poorly, he drove trucks, he lived hard, and he died. Muscle Man watched his father die from the consequences of that lifestyle, and then continued living the exact same way. That is not ignorance, that is denial. Muscle Man knows what happens to people like him. He watched it happen to his father. But he cannot or will not change because changing would mean admitting that his entire identity is built on self-destruction. Muscle Man is 25 years old in the show's present day. He is already obese. He already has health scares. He already came close to dying in an eating contest. If he continues on this trajectory, he will not live to see 50. He might not live to see 40. The show's finale includes a time jump showing where everyone ends up 25 years later. Muscle Man and Starla are still together. They have multiple children. Muscle Man is still alive. But the finale also shows that Muscle Man has aged significantly. He looks older than the other characters. He looks worn down. The implication is that those 25 years were hard on his body. He survived, but he did not thrive. He is still living in the trailer park. He is still living the same lifestyle. He made it to 50, but at what cost? The show does not explore this. It presents Muscle Man's ending as happy because he has a family and he is still with Starla. But surviving is not the same as thriving. Muscle Man's body has been through decades of abuse. He is alive, but he is not healthy. The tragedy of Muscle Man is that everyone around him enables his self-destruction. Mordecai and Rigby participate in his eating binges. High Five Ghost laughs at his stunts. Benson yells at him but never actually fires him or forces him to change. Skips solves supernatural problems but does not intervene in Muscle Man's lifestyle. Pops treats him with kindness but does not push him to be better. Everyone accepts that this is who Muscle Man is. They accept that he is gross and reckless and unhealthy. They make jokes about it. They participate in it. They enable it. Because confronting it would require acknowledging that Muscle Man is on a path toward early death, and nobody wants to have that conversation. It is easier to laugh at the fat guy who eats too much than to sit him down and tell him he is killing himself. Starla is the only person who tries to change Muscle Man's trajectory. She is the only one who says out loud that his lifestyle is unsustainable. She is the only one who loves him enough to risk making him uncomfortable by suggesting he needs to eat healthier. And Muscle Man listens to her, but only barely. He agrees to the diet, but he cannot commit without one last binge. He agrees to try, but he does not actually believe he can change. Muscle Man's identity is so tied to his destructive habits that removing those habits would mean becoming someone else. And Muscle Man does not know how to be anyone else. He is the gross guy. He is the fat guy. He is the guy who eats too much and drives too fast and pulls dangerous pranks and lives in filth. That is Muscle Man. Without those things, he is just Mitch Sorenstein. And Mitch Sorenstein does not exist in this show. There is only Muscle Man. And Muscle Man is killing himself. The show never explicitly says that Muscle Man will die young, but it does not have to. The evidence is there in every episode. Muscle Man's body is a ticking time bomb. His heart is under constant strain from his weight and his diet. His organs are being damaged by years of overeating and poor nutrition. His reckless behavior puts him in life-threatening situations regularly. His refusal to change means the damage keeps accumulating. Every hot dog eating contest, every fast food binge, every dangerous stunt, every day living in filth, all of it adds up, and eventually it will catch up to him. Muscle Man might make it to 50. He might even make it to 60 if Starla manages to keep him on track, but he will not make it to 70. He will not make it to 80. He will not grow old. He will die in middle age from preventable causes. Heart disease, diabetes, stroke, organ failure. Something will give. And when it does, everyone will act surprised, even though they all saw it coming. Muscle Man's story is sad because it is real. There are people like Muscle Man in every workplace. The guy who eats terribly and jokes about it. The guy who is obviously unhealthy but refuses to do anything about it. The guy who equates self-destruction with personality. These people exist, and they die young. They have heart attacks at 45. They develop diabetes and lose limbs. They have strokes and become disabled. They die, and everyone says it is tragic, but it was not unpredictable. The signs were there, the warnings were there, but nobody wanted to be the person who said out loud that their friend was killing themselves. So everyone enabled it. Everyone laughed at the jokes. Everyone participated in the binges. Everyone looked the other way. And then one day that person is gone, and everyone wonders what they could have done differently. The answer is, They could have stopped enabling. They could have stopped laughing. They could have had the uncomfortable conversation. But they did not, because it was easier not to. Regular Show uses Muscle Man as comic relief. He is the gross-out character. He is the guy who makes everyone uncomfortable with his body and his habits. He exists to be laughed at. But underneath the comedy is a genuinely dark portrait of a man who does not value his own life. Muscle Man is obese, not because of genetics or circumstance, but because he actively chooses to eat in ways that destroy his body. He lives in filth, not because he cannot afford better, but because he does not care. He drives recklessly, not because he is a bad driver, but because he does not value safety. He pulls dangerous pranks, not because he is creative, but because he needs the validation of being the guy who goes too far. Every choice Muscle Man makes is a choice against his own well-being. He is slowly killing himself. And the show treats it as a joke. Until it does not. Until episodes like Last Meal show death literally telling Muscle Man he is going to die. Until episodes like Trailer Trashed show the physical consequences of living in squalor. Until moments where Muscle Man looks at Starla and realizes he might lose everything because he cannot stop destroying himself. Those moments are brief. The show returns to comedy quickly. But they are there, and once you see them, you cannot unsee them. Muscle Man is not just a funny character, he is a tragedy in progress. And the punchline is that he knows it, and he cannot stop. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that the government knows everything and is letting the park operate as a containment zone. When you really think about it, something deeply unsettling happens throughout Regular Show that never gets addressed. Mordecai and Rigby encounter aliens, demons, time travelers, reality-warping entities, and literal gods on a regular basis. The park gets destroyed multiple times. Portals open up to other dimensions. Alien spacecraft land in the middle of the city. And somehow, absolutely nobody outside the park seems to care. No news coverage, no military intervention, no government response. The theory that makes the most sense is genuinely disturbing when you piece it together. The government knows exactly what the park is, and they're deliberately letting it function as an unofficial containment zone for paranormal threats. Throughout the entire series, the park attracts supernatural and cosmic entities like a magnet. Mordecai and Rigby summon a wizard from a keyboard. They accidentally create a portal to the friend zone, which is literally another dimension. They encounter Death himself multiple times, and he treats them like casual acquaintances. Ancient evil beings emerge from arcade games, microwave manuals, and VHS tapes. Time machines appear. Rigby's body gets possessed by a Russian sleep experiment tape. They fight demons over dodgeball games. Baby ducks from another dimension invade during a simple afternoon. The park experiences more paranormal activity in a single month than most places see in a century. And somehow, this all happens without any external oversight or investigation. The frequency and scale of these incidents should trigger some kind of response. When a massive UFO hovers over the city and aliens start abducting people, you would expect fighter jets, news helicopters, emergency broadcasts. When Rigby accidentally opens a portal that nearly destroys reality itself, you would think government agencies designed specifically to handle unusual threats would show up. When Muscle Man's trailer literally explodes and launches into space, taking half the park with it, you would assume insurance companies, safety inspectors, or law enforcement would get involved. But none of that ever happens. The park exists in this weird bubble where the normal rules of society stop applying. Benson somehow keeps his job despite the park being destroyed multiple times. Buildings explode, the entire landscape gets altered, massive craters appear, and yet he still has to file reports with someone. He answers to someone higher up.
The park has a budget. Someone is paying for all this.
When you see Benson stressing about reports and dealing with park management bureaucracy, you realize there's a whole system above him that's aware of what happens at the park. They know Mordecai and Rigby cause millions of dollars in damage. They know supernatural events occur constantly, and they keep the park open anyway. That makes zero sense unless the park serves a specific purpose that justifies the chaos. Skips is the key to understanding how deep this goes. He has connections to cosmic entities, ancient guardians, and beings that exist outside normal reality. He knows death personally. He's friends with the guardians of eternal youth. He fought in cosmic wars. He can fix almost any paranormal problem because he's dealt with similar situations for centuries. The park is basically built around Skips, and Skips has been at the park for a very long time. Someone with his knowledge and connections chose to stay at this specific location, doing manual labor and maintaining grounds, which makes absolutely no sense unless the park itself is important. Skips could work anywhere. He could do anything. But he stays at the park, quietly handling supernatural threats that emerge there, almost like he's supposed to be there. The movie makes this theory impossible to ignore. The entire plot revolves around time travel, alternate timelines, and authority figures from the future who police temporal anomalies. Future Rigby comes back to fix his past, which creates a massive time paradox. Ross, the villain, is literally a time police officer who goes rogue. The Time Police exist as an established organization with technology, protocols, and enforcement capabilities. They monitor the timeline and intervene when things go wrong. They have records of what happens at the park. They know about Mordecai and Rigby. They know about all the supernatural incidents, and somehow, despite everything that happens at the park warping reality and threatening the timeline constantly, the Time Police generally leave them alone. Ross only shows up because of the specific circumstances around Rigby's time manipulation, not because of the hundreds of other reality-threatening incidents that happen at the park every week. This suggests the Time Police, and by extension other government agencies dealing with supernatural threats, have classified the park as something that shouldn't be interfered with under normal circumstances. They're watching, they're monitoring, they know exactly what happens there. But they have standing orders to let events play out, unless something threatens the entire timeline or reality itself. The park has been designated as a soft containment zone, where paranormal entities can emerge and be dealt with in a controlled environment. It's better to have all these threats appearing in one location, handled by people who somehow always manage to survive, than having them scattered randomly across the world. Think about what would actually happen if the government tried to study or control the park directly. Every time official authority figures try to impose structure on supernatural chaos, things get worse. When park rangers with actual authority show up, they usually cause more problems than they solve. When people try to weaponize or study paranormal phenomena, it backfires catastrophically. The park works specifically because it operates with minimal official oversight. Mordecai and Rigby, despite being lazy slackers, have something that makes them uniquely suited to handling these threats. They stumble into solutions. They make friends with cosmic entities. They accidentally save reality multiple times. A formal government response would disrupt this bizarre ecosystem that's somehow keeping larger threats contained. The fact that Mordecai and Rigby never face legal consequences for anything reveals how protected the park really is. They've destroyed public property, endangered civilians, caused massive disasters, and violated countless laws. Rigby literally faked his high school diploma, which is fraud. They've stolen military equipment, interfered with police investigations, and caused damage that would normally result in federal charges. But nothing ever happens to them legally. They never get arrested and held accountable. Benson yells at them and threatens to fire them, but external legal consequences never materialize. Someone is running interference. Someone is making sure that what happens at the park stays at the park. The isolation of the park itself is suspicious when you map out the geography. The park seems removed from the main city, existing in its own space where normal rules apply differently. People visit the park, but they're always outsiders who leave. The park staff lives and works there in this bubble where supernatural events are just part of the job. The regulars who frequent the park, like Margaret and her friends, witness impossible things but somehow accept it as normal. The park has its own internal logic, its own rules, and the outside world lets it operate independently. This separation is deliberately maintained. Other characters who interact with the park accidentally stumble into this containment zone without realizing what it is. When Mordecai dates Margaret or CJ, he brings them into situations involving monsters, curses, and reality distortions, and they somehow accept this as just part of dating him. When Muscle Man's family visits, they witness supernatural chaos and treat it like normal park activities. People who spend time at the park get acclimated to the paranormal, which suggests the park has some kind of effect on perception or acceptance. Maybe that's part of why it works as a containment zone. The location itself makes people more accepting of impossible things, which prevents panic and keeps threats localized. The cosmic entities that appear at the park specifically choose that location. They don't just randomly spawn there by accident. Beings from other dimensions, alien species, ancient evils, they're all drawn to the park for a reason. The park sits on some kind of supernatural convergence point, a thin spot where the barriers between realities are weaker. This would explain why so many paranormal incidents occur in one location. The government discovered this property, realized they couldn't seal it or control it, and decided the next best option was to let it function as a catch basin. Better to have threats emerging in a known location with people who can handle them than trying to suppress something that can't be suppressed. Benson's role becomes darker when you view him as a government liaison rather than just a park manager. He maintains the appearance of normal park operations. He enforces basic rules and tries to keep things running. He files reports with higher-ups who clearly know what's really happening. He keeps Mordecai and Rigby employed despite the chaos they cause, because he understands they're essential to the containment function. His constant stress and anger make sense when you realize he's trying to maintain the illusion of normalcy while managing a site that regularly experiences apocalyptic events. He's stuck between the government that assigned him there and the reality of what the park actually is. The park's budget and funding become especially suspicious. Operating a public park shouldn't generate enough revenue to rebuild after constant destruction. The amount of money that would be required to repair the damage from all the supernatural incidents would bankrupt any normal municipal budget. But the park keeps operating. Buildings get rebuilt, equipment gets replaced, salaries get paid. Someone is funding this operation at a level that far exceeds normal park maintenance. That money is coming from somewhere, from some budget that accounts for the park's real purpose. The government is financing the containment operation under the cover of park management expenses. When you look at the types of threats that appear at the park, they're exactly the kind of things a government would want contained. Reality-warping entities that could destabilize society. Alien species that could trigger mass panic. Time anomalies that could destroy the timeline. Demonic entities that could spread beyond a single location. Ancient evils that could threaten civilization. All of these threats emerge at the park and get resolved by the people who work there, usually before the general public even becomes aware of the danger. The park functions as an early warning system and a first line of defense against supernatural threats, and the government has decided this arrangement works better than any alternative. The relationship between the park and other supernatural locations in the show reveals a larger network. The Guardian of the Friend Zone mentions other dimensional spaces. The Guardians of Eternal Youth exist in their own realm. Death has his own domain. The park connects to all these places. It serves as a hub or a crossroads where different realities intersect. The government would obviously want to monitor and control access to this network, but direct control is impossible. So, they do the next best thing and maintain the park as a buffer zone where these intersections can be observed and managed indirectly. What makes this theory genuinely disturbing is what it means for Mordecai and Rigby personally. They think they're just slacker employees at a normal park. They believe the supernatural chaos that surrounds them is random bad luck or the consequences of their own actions. But the reality would be that they're unwitting agents in a government containment operation. They're being allowed to live and work at the park specifically because they're good at surviving supernatural threats. Their employment isn't despite the chaos they cause, but because of how they handle impossible situations. They're tools being used by people who understand what the park really is, and they have no idea. Everyone at the park is trapped in this system. Skips knows more than he lets on, but even he might not fully understand the government's involvement. Pops is this cosmic entity with ties to the fundamental nature of reality itself, and his presence at the park is probably not coincidental. Muscle Man and High Five Ghost are regular guys who got jobs at the park and found themselves dealing with supernatural threats they never signed up for. They're all stuck in this location that serves a purpose they didn't choose, managed by forces they can't see, fighting threats that shouldn't be their responsibility. The show ending with them going to space and literally saving the universe from Pop's evil brother takes on new meaning. The park was always the first line of defense against cosmic threats. The final battle was just the culmination of what the park had been building toward. The government, the time police, every authority figure who knew what the park really was. They were all banking on Mordecai and Rigby being ready when the ultimate threat arrived. The park wasn't just containing random supernatural incidents. It was training them, preparing them, putting them through increasingly dangerous situations until they were capable of facing a universe-ending threat. The government knows. They've always known. They're letting the park operate as a containment zone because it works, and everyone who works there is unknowingly part of something much larger and more disturbing than they realize. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have the theory that Benson is an abusive father figure. Benson yells so much that his head literally turns red and shakes like a gumball machine about to explode. This happens multiple times per episode, and the show treats it like a normal reaction to minor workplace mistakes. Mordecai and Rigby forget to set up chairs or leave early, and Benson's response is to scream threats at them until his entire body vibrates with rage. When you actually watch his behavior patterns across the series, Benson displays almost every characteristic of an abusive authority figure who takes out his personal failures and frustrations on the people beneath him. The show plays this for comedy, but the underlying dynamic is genuinely disturbing when you examine how he treats his employees over 8 seasons. The most obvious pattern is the constant threat of firing. Benson threatens to fire Mordecai and Rigby in almost every episode, sometimes multiple times in a single day. He screams that they're fired, then immediately takes it back once they fix whatever problem occurred. This creates a state of constant anxiety and job insecurity. They never know if the threat is real or empty. They can never relax or feel safe in their employment. This is textbook emotional abuse, where the person in power maintains control through unpredictable threats. Mordecai and Rigby should have been desensitized to the threats after the first 100 times, but they still react with fear each time Benson explodes. That suggests they genuinely believe he might follow through, which means the threats are effective psychological control mechanisms. The disproportionate rage Benson displays over minor mistakes reveals someone who views his employees as outlets for deeper frustrations. Rigby accidentally breaks something, and Benson's response is nuclear fury. Mordecai shows up 5 minutes late, and Benson acts like it's a personal betrayal. The punishment never fits the crime. Normal workplace violations get treated like unforgivable offenses. A functional manager would issue warnings, have conversations, maybe write someone up for repeated issues. Benson goes immediately to screaming and threats. This explosive anger over small triggers is characteristic of someone who's carrying massive internal rage about their own life situation, and releasing it on convenient targets who can't fight back without losing their jobs. What makes Benson's behavior especially toxic is how he refuses to acknowledge positive contributions. Mordecai and Rigby save the park from destruction constantly. They defeat monsters, close dimensional portals, and prevent apocalyptic events multiple times per week. They literally save Benson's life on numerous occasions. They save everyone's lives. They put themselves in genuine danger to protect the park and the people who work there. And Benson's response is usually just relief that the park didn't get destroyed, followed immediately by yelling about whatever task they neglected while they were busy saving reality. He never thanks them. He never acknowledges that they went above and beyond. He definitely never gives them raises or promotions, despite them performing job duties that go way beyond groundskeeping. The few moments when Benson shows softness or appreciation stand out specifically because they're so rare. When Benson actually compliments Mordecai and Rigby or shows he cares about them, it feels shocking. The show treats these moments as significant character development, which reveals that the baseline is harsh and unappreciative. In a healthy workplace or parental relationship, kindness and recognition would be normal. The fact that Benson being decent to them is noteworthy shows how dysfunctional the dynamic really is. These occasional moments of warmth also function like the honeymoon phase in abuse cycles, where the abuser shows affection just often enough to keep the victim hoping things will improve and make them question whether the abuse is really that bad. Benson's backstory makes his behavior even more disturbing because it confirms he's projecting his failures onto Mordecai and Rigby. He had dreams of being a successful drummer. He had a band. He had potential for a creative career. But he gave it all up and ended up managing a park, doing a job that clearly doesn't fulfill him. Every time he looks at Mordecai and Rigby slacking off and not taking their job seriously, he sees a reflection of what he perceives as his own wasted potential. They represent the time he feels he wasted, the dreams he abandoned, the life he could have had if he'd made different choices. So he punishes them for being young and directionless, because he's actually punishing his younger self. The power dynamic Benson maintains is pure authoritarian control. He doesn't manage through collaboration or team building. He rules through fear and intimidation. His management style is basically, do what I say or suffer consequences. He assigns tasks and expects immediate obedience. He doesn't explain why tasks matter or help his employees develop skills. He just demands compliance and explodes when he doesn't get it. This creates an environment where Mordecai and Rigby are constantly walking on eggshells, never sure what will trigger an explosion, always anxious about his mood. That's not management, that's psychological domination. Benson also isolates and undermines his employees in ways that prevent them from developing confidence or independence. He never teaches them how to do things correctly. He just tells them to do tasks, then screams when they do those tasks wrong. A good manager would provide training, feedback, and support. Benson provides orders and anger. This keeps Mordecai and Rigby dependent on his approval, while simultaneously making it impossible to earn that approval. They're set up to fail, then punished for failing. This cycle keeps them in a state of learned helplessness, where they stop trying to improve because improvement never gets recognized anyway. The way Benson controls information and resources mirrors abusive parental tactics. He has access to the park office, the filing systems, the budget, all the operational knowledge that Mordecai and Rigby need to do their jobs well. But he hoards this information. He doesn't share it. He doesn't empower them. He keeps them dependent on him for everything. When they need something, they have to go through Benson. When they want to know something, they have to ask Benson. This information asymmetry maintains his power and prevents them from becoming autonomous. An abusive parent does the same thing by controlling access to money, transportation, information, anything that would allow their children to develop independence. Benson's treatment of other employees reveals that his harshest behavior is specifically directed at Mordecai and Rigby. He's generally decent to Skips. He's relatively normal with Pops. Even Muscle Man and High Five Ghost get treated better. Mordecai and Rigby receive the concentrated version of his rage. This targeted abuse makes sense when you understand they represent something specific to him. They're young, they're unmotivated, they waste time, they don't appreciate their jobs. Everything Benson hates about his own past gets channeled into how he treats them. They become his personal therapy punching bags, except therapy would actually address his issues instead of perpetuating them. The show reveals that Benson's anger management issues are severe enough that he's aware of them and actively struggles with them. He knows he has a problem. He tries to control his temper. Sometimes he apologizes, but he never actually changes his behavior patterns. He never gets real help. He never develops healthier management strategies. This is classic abuser behavior, where they acknowledge the problem just enough to avoid consequences, but never commit to actual change. Benson says he'll try to yell less, then continues yelling. He promises to be more understanding, then immediately goes back to threats and intimidation. The acknowledgement becomes another form of manipulation because it creates false hope that things will improve. The economic control Benson has over Mordecai and Rigby adds another layer of toxicity. They live at the park. Their housing is tied to their employment. If Benson actually fires them, they lose not just their jobs, but their home. This makes the firing threats exponentially more serious. He's threatening their basic survival and stability. They can't just find another job if he fires them. They'd be homeless. Benson knows this. He knows the power he has over their entire lives. And he uses that power casually, threatening their security multiple times per day over trivial issues. This is economic abuse, using financial control to dominate and manipulate. Mordecai and Rigby's coping mechanisms reveal the psychological impact of working under Benson. They slack off constantly, which could be read as laziness, but it's also a form of resistance against an authority figure who makes them feel powerless. When you can't succeed no matter what you do, when effort doesn't get recognized, when you're going to get yelled at regardless, why try? Their slacking is learned helplessness turned into passive rebellion. They've internalized that Benson's approval is unattainable, so they stop pursuing it and find satisfaction in small acts of defiance like playing video games on company time. The trauma bonding between Mordecai and Rigby makes sense in this context. They're united by their shared experience of being Benson's primary targets. Their friendship is strengthened by mutual survival of his abuse. They protect each other. They cover for each other. They face Benson's rage together. This is exactly what happens in abusive family systems, where siblings bond over surviving a harsh parent. The abuse becomes a shared experience that ties them together, and they develop loyalty to each other specifically because they're going through the same trauma. Benson's rare moments of vulnerability manipulate Mordecai and Rigby into staying and hoping he'll change. When he opens up about his past, his dreams, his struggles, it creates sympathy. It makes them see him as human and flawed rather than just a tyrant. This is how abusive relationships continue. The abuser shows just enough humanity to make the victim feel guilty about leaving or setting boundaries. Mordecai and Rigby see Benson's pain and make excuses for his behavior. They think maybe if they just tried harder or did better, he wouldn't have to yell. This is victim thinking, where the person being abused takes responsibility for the abuser's actions. The fact that Benson never faces consequences for his behavior shows a broken system. Someone above him in park management must know how he treats his employees. The yelling is constant and loud. The workplace dysfunction is obvious. But nobody intervenes. Nobody holds him accountable. Nobody provides oversight or corrective action. This mirrors how abusive parents often operate in systems that enable them, where neighbors hear screaming, teachers see signs, but nobody steps in because family dynamics or workplace hierarchies are considered private matters. The lack of external intervention tells Mordecai and Rigby that Benson's behavior is acceptable, that authority figures are allowed to treat subordinates this way. The normalization of Benson's abuse throughout the show sends a disturbing message. The other characters treat his explosions as just Benson being Benson. Skips might tell him to calm down occasionally, but nobody seriously challenges his management style. Pops is too innocent to recognize abuse patterns. Muscle Man finds it funny. Everyone has adapted to the dysfunction instead of addressing it. This is exactly what happens in abusive environments, where the abuse becomes normalized over time. People stop seeing it as wrong and start seeing it as just how things are. The victim stops recognizing they're being abused because everyone around them acts like the behavior is acceptable. Benson's control extends beyond work duties into personal life monitoring. He doesn't just care whether tasks get completed, he monitors when Mordecai and Rigby wake up, what they do in their free time, who they hang out with, how they spend their evenings. This surveillance and control over personal time crosses professional boundaries. A boss who monitors your entire life isn't managing, they're dominating. This mirrors parental control tactics where the parent doesn't respect boundaries between their authority and their child's autonomy. Benson treats Mordecai and Rigby like they're his property, rather than employees with rights and privacy. The way Benson frames every mistake as a moral failing rather than a normal error reveals his psychological abuse tactics. When Mordecai and Rigby mess up, he doesn't just say they made a mistake. He implies they're bad people. He questions their character. He makes them feel worthless and incompetent. This destroys self-esteem systematically. Instead of building employees up and helping them improve, he tears them down and makes them doubt themselves. This is psychological abuse designed to maintain power by keeping the victim feeling inadequate and grateful for any approval. What makes the Benson dynamic especially dark is that Mordecai and Rigby continue seeking his approval despite the abuse. They want him to be proud of them. They want recognition. They want him to acknowledge their worth. This desperate need for approval from their abuser is textbook trauma response. They've internalized that Benson's opinion matters, that his validation would mean something. They're trapped in a cycle where they keep trying to earn love from someone who's shown them repeatedly that love is conditional and approval is weaponized. They can't escape because part of them still hopes that if they just prove themselves enough, Benson will finally see their value. The show ending with them all going to space and Benson fighting alongside them doesn't erase 8 seasons of psychological abuse. One moment of Benson showing up when it really matters doesn't undo the daily trauma he inflicted. Abuse survivors often cling to these rare, positive moments as proof that their abuser really cares, that the abuse wasn't that bad, that things can change. But patterns matter more than exceptions. Benson's baseline behavior across the entire series is controlling, explosive, threatening, and emotionally damaging. The fact that he occasionally shows decency doesn't make him any less of a toxic authority figure who damaged the people under his power. Benson represents every bad boss who takes out their personal disappointments on employees who can't fight back. He represents every parent who controls through fear instead of guiding through support. He's the embodiment of toxic authority that maintains power through psychological domination rather than earned respect. And the truly disturbing part is how the show normalizes this dynamic, treats it as comedy, and never seriously addresses the damage this kind of treatment causes to the people who experience it daily. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.